You watched the trailer for The Crow?
I did.
I think that shit looks fucking sick. I'm very excited for that.
You were the one person that I was like, oh yeah, he's got something nice to say. And I didn't expect you to be the one person. So I hear all the gripes, like I get it, I see it, like I also would have been like, hey, maybe we don't make him look as similar to Jared Leto's The Joker. But that being said, I really like the mullet. I think it plays.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also don't think he's supposed to look like the way we would want to look. Like, I don't think that's the point. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't dress like that.
I think the action looks really good, and I really like Bill Skarsgård. So those are my takeaways. Mm-hmm. My positive takeaways. My negative takeaways is that the feel of it is generic action movie of this, like the production value and stuff like that. It's got like a John Wick. Not that I want to say John Wick is a typical action movie by any means, but that's kind of what it feels like it's leaning more towards. Where Brandon Lee's Crow's like, that's like 1989 Batman. Like that's what that universe feels like.
Oh yeah.
So, I am like, I admire the original Crow, but it's like, believe it or not, it's never been like a movie that I've been like, yeah, this movie's the fucking shit.
It's not that great of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. Brandon Lee is a force of nature.
Yeah.
But the movie's not that great.
Like, I've like legitimately tried to watch it numerous times and never been able to get through it in a full sitting. So I don't really know what that says.
I feel like that says a couple things.
So I'm not nearly as concerned as a lot of people are. Like I think it'll be a fun watch.
Yeah.
Like either way, the action, like what he's doing with the gun, where he's like shooting
himself.
I'm like,
that's fucking sick, dude. Like what? Like
actually,
like you want me to go see a movie that'll get you shooting through himself. I mean, But like to me, like I thought the parts that weren't the action sequences look really good. Like I thought the space between life and death looked cool.
Yeah.
And like I thought the scenes where there was just people talking looked like, I don't know, like a movie. Like they actually like are trying to like make a movie, and then the action sequences, like, isn't everything that does gun action and like over the top violence action going to be influenced by John Wick from now on?
Yeah.
Isn't that the way it's just gonna be?
It's gonna be that way. Just how movies were influenced by the Matrix,
right?
You know?
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm saying. It's kind of like, for me, that's kind of like a criticism. Like, oh, this looks like the Matrix. Like, yeah, movies were really heavily influenced by the Matrix. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
rightfully so.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. And also, like, I love Billy Skarsgård. So
If I had to choose between the two, his other film, Boy Kills World or something like that. That looks fun as fuck.
It does.
That looks like all kinds of fun.
He's busy, huh?
Yeah, man. He's except for I would say with the exception of like Timothée Chalamet. He's kind of one of those it guys, but he's he's like the it guy that is like off kilter pretty. So he gets a little bit more of the fun roles, I would say. Speaking of fun roles, if you had to have a It's a classic question here, pal.
All right, let's go.
I am sure I've asked it before, but I don't remember the answer. So, if you had to have a superpower, what would it be?
If you got to have a superpower, rather, what would it be?
The answer is pretty morbid, but necromancy and power over death.
No, I mean that suits the show you're on. So.
It certainly does. We're talking about more like normal superpowers. I'm gonna take like Professor Xavier's ability to control people and like psychically affect things. Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid.
I would try to fix the world and probably turn into a dictator. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not on purpose, but just
that's
power corrupts.
That's how those stories tend to go, you know?
Yeah.
You get the Messiah, Eventually, you get all your ducks in a row, and then you gotta keep on getting your ducks in a row.
That's right. Once the ducks in a row, you keep going. No one can stop me. Yeah.
Well, those ducks over there don't want to be in my row, but look at how happy all these ducks are.
That's right.
I don't know. I think the basic answer is flight, right? It's either flight or invincibility.
Sure.
I like invincibility in like pretty much one form. I don't need to be Superman or the Hulk or anything, but like I've always fancied myself a little bit of have a little bit of Wolverine in me, and just the ability to just go berserk.
Yes.
Would be it feel pretty good, I think so.
I love the idea of like Wolverine's powers from the standpoint of like not having as much anxiety.
Yes.
Because like I'm impervious to whatever, so like it's fine and I can just kind of relax. So like Wolverine's powers for peace of mind for sure.
Yeah.
But my only problem with that is then you have to watch everyone around you die.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not totally ideal.
No, that's actually the opposite. So yeah.
Right.
I think because it's.
That's why I cheat and choose necromancy.
Yeah.
Because I can protect everyone around me too.
Doesn't Scarlet Witch dabble?
A little bit. Yeah, she does a little bit.
Yeah. So there you go.
Scarlet Witch does what she wants.
Hey, you know what? On this show, we do what we want.
Slanche.
Cheers. Tasty pastry.
Yeah, not bad.
Welcome back to the Jony Horror Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jony Horror, and with me, my wingman, and gosh, you don't have your little, where's your little thing that says what a handsome, intelligent, and obviously the best movie critic out there.
Oh, right, yeah. Where is it? I need
so
it.
used to you being on a screen and you get to pick your little tagline.
That's right.
Kalen Behrman, ladies and gentlemen.
Misunderstood genius, Kalen Behrman.
Yes, indeed. Necromancer. And possible dictator. Oh, man. How you doing, pal?
Living the dream, brother.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I feel like I say it every time we do this, but it's somebody's dream. And
That's
eventually I'm going to sell it to him. Feel like, but like the problem is that if my life is somebody's dream, whatever they can afford to sell me is going to be less than what I already have, right? Like theoretically, right?
Maybe.
You never know.
I don't know.
It could be.
I'm sure there are rich people that would want to trade places.
It could be a prince and a pauper sort of situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. I like this. I like this a lot. We've been talking about it pretty much almost since you started coming on this podcast, and now you're officially part of this podcast, no longer a guest. You are slowly but surely getting your ducks in a row.
That's right.
We'll eventually take over
Get those other ducks.
the Kalen Horror Podcast. We are starting our coverage on the Eastrail 177 trilogy, beginning with what is it? Is it 2000?
2000.
2000's Unbreakable. Thriller mystery superhero film starring Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. We've discussed this movie numerous times briefly on this podcast. No spoilers, but it's one of both of our favorite movies. So, it's come up a lot, and I think we both agreed that it needed a long format discussion. So here we are, and I will talk about my first memories with this movie, but first I want to hear when and where and how old were you when you first heard about this movie and or were aware of it?
So when it came out, I was like a tween.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I saw it until probably like the following year, which sounds like a really long time, but back then movies had a theatrical run and then you had to wait for the video.
Yeah.
And that took a long time. And if you didn't catch it during the theatrical run, you just had to wait for the video. And I didn't catch it in theaters. Shyamalan had only made The Sixth Sense up until that point, and like I liked that movie.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question. Have you had seen Sixth Sense?
Yeah,
before?
I had seen The Sixth Sense before, and I liked The Sixth Sense, but it wasn't something that made me go, "Oh, I have to see his next movie." Also, I was quite young. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say the twist probably wasn't quite the revelation for you that it was for most of the world, right?
The twist in
The Sixth Sense.
No, I mean it was.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, it was. It was still a pretty major revelation. Yeah.
Well, that's good for you, because by the time I got around to watching The Sixth Sense,
you already knew it.
Yeah, oh God, I knew it 100 times over.
I don't think knowing the twist ruins the movie though.
No, by no means.
And
it's a great film.
Not to jump ahead, but I don't really love people who judge Shyamalan movies just on like how strong is the twist, because like that's just not the whole point of the movie. But
very unfair thing
not
that has been put upon
films.
that man. But again, we'll get more to that later.
But so I had seen it. My dad rented it, and I just watched it one day. It must have been 2001, with my dad, and we watched it on that big old screen, and it changed my life. Yeah.
I saw it. I honestly cannot remember. I'm pretty sure I saw it before I saw The Sixth Sense.
Okay.
I had recently moved in with my dad after my parents had been split up for probably like a year and a half or so, give or take. My mom was moving to Ventura, so I moved with my dad because I didn't want to move from the city we were living in at the time. And
you're in the valley, right?
Yeah, in Antelope Valley. So I wanted to keep on going to my school and be with my friends. He actually lived out in the Mojave Desert, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about this on the show here, that like there's just like a little like house, and then our neighbor was like a quarter of a mile away, like our nearest neighbor, and then there was no one else around.
That's crazy.
So there wasn't a lot to do out there, so I watched a lot of movies. And because I was at an age where my dad had deemed it appropriate, and like I wasn't under the restrictions of my mother's religious beliefs, I was able to watch a lot more movies. And I don't think there's anything in this movie really that I would dictate as terribly inappropriate for a child at that age to watch. Some interesting stuff towards the end, perhaps, but
it's a little violent, a little scary. Yeah.
For sure. But like I think, had that been, presented to my mom, like, even if my parents had still been together, like, I would have been able to watch Unbreakable. But it was just a movie that, like, had been out. This is probably roughly, I'd say, somewhere around 2004, give or take. So, you know, they were just like, I don't even remember how it came about. I just remember them being like, oh, the guy who did The Sixth Sense did this movie. And I didn't really know what I was in for. I remember that. I remember sitting in my dad's bedroom. His girlfriend at the time, him and his girlfriend had a very toxic relationship. So she had been living with him, and they had this like big old bed and everything in there. And I'm pretty sure at this stage in the game, like, she had moved out. They had a big old fight and moved out and like took the big old bed. So like he just had a mattress in there. They had gotten back together by the time I watched Unbreakable. Like I said, toxic relationship, folks. But I'm pretty sure I was like sitting on a mattress in my dad's. That was like a mattress that was on the floor in my dad's bedroom watching this. And I remember just being really kind of taken with the film. Obviously, this is a long time ago now, and I didn't know what I was in for when I was watching it. And I don't even think I realized how much I was taken by the film until years later when you and I started discussing it. And me being like, no, yeah, that movie actually was something special. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna dive into that shortly and all the things that we like about this film, and maybe if there are things we don't like about this film, we're gonna talk about that too. We're gonna do a deep dive. But before we do that, we are gonna jump over to a new category here on the Jony Horror Podcast, where we talk about anything new and notable in the world of horror in a category that we have aptly titled the Jony Horror News. Here in the Jony Horror News, we're just going to get you up to date on anything that has happened in the last couple of days of this episode's recording. By the time it gets released, this will probably be old news, but, you know, who cares? We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's happening in the world of horror right now. First and foremost, I woke up this morning to pictures of Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice for the first time in, what, like 35 years? Something like that. So,
maybe more.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, we got a trailer coming soon. By the time this release, we might even have a trailer, so he looks like Beetlejuice, right?
He sure looks like Beetlejuice. I love Michael Keaton, and to this day, I totally unironically love prime Tim Burton, like from that era.
Yeah.
Tim Burton hasn't made anything that's interested me in a really long time.
I agree.
Like an especially long time, if I'm being real. So, I'm going to withhold any kind of excitement until I see a trailer.
Yeah, that's fair.
I probably will go see the movie. Like, I'm going to go watch it and give it a try. But
yeah.
I'm not anticipating anything great. I do think the original Beetlejuice is great.
Yeah.
I strongly recommend that to anyone.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'll see.
I really, the only thing that, like, I like Beetlejuice a lot, but I also saw it, like, for the first time as an adult. So
right.
I feel like, there's a lot of just a lot of great acting, quirky things, some great dialogue. I really do enjoy that film. I did not need another one, but since we're getting another one, I'm like the only thing that I'm excited about is Michael Keaton. Like, I just love Michael Keaton, and we had a big long discussion about how much I love him, because to watch him again as Batman in last year's Flash movie was pretty spectacular. So
pretty rad.
I thought that was going to be the big news of the day, and then a couple hours later, I saw the teaser trailer for
Alien Romulus had just dropped, and I was in the middle of doing a little bit of research for this podcast, and immediately, like, the credits were rolling from Unbreakable. They were playing in the background. I was really enjoying the music and everything, and then as soon as I saw that, I was like, everyone shut up! Shut the fuck up! Pause the thing. Like, threw the remote, fucking hopped on YouTube, just like shoved the phone in my face. And I rewatched that trailer probably about, I don't know, like 6 or 7 times today. That, it's been a minute since I've seen a teaser trailer. Like, that was a legit teaser trailer. Because these days you get the 10-second spot that's the teaser for the trailer, you know, and then we get like a 2.5-minute trailer, and
sometimes they even call that the teaser.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That was a full trailer though.
Yeah, exactly. This is like a minute long, and it has that wonderful alien trailer sound effect that they use. I don't know what it is, but it's the sound that they used in the original trailer, and then they used in Prometheus and the Alien Covenant trailer. I don't know what that sound is, but every time I hear it, I get fucking scared, and I thought that was a really solid teaser trailer. What did you think when you saw it?
Good trailer.
And that's it, folks. That's
looks scary. I am very cautious about that movie because I have not loved anything that Fede Alvarez has done.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Oh, see, I'm a big fan.
I know.
There's a difference.
I know you are, and I understand why. I personally haven't loved anything that he's done, and my standard for an alien movie is high for what I want from an alien movie.
Well, there's really only 2 really good ones.
There's only 2 alien movies I like.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a over the years have become, I don't want to say necessarily a defender. I'm not going to defend it because I see the problems with Alien 3, but it has grown on me a significant amount. I know.
It has positive qualities.
Yeah, absolutely. Prometheus, for all of its puzzling decisions, is a fun ride for me.
It's an interesting movie.
And I've only seen Covenant the one time, but there was, again, some puzzling choices made, but there was also some interesting things as well. So I'm going into this with just like.
And you like Alien versus Predator?
I did at one point in time. Yes.
You moved past that.
I don't think I have much love for that specific spin-off franchise, but then again, I haven't gone back to it in a long time. So, but that whole AVP should just, so many holes and continuity things arise from that.
Its potential.
Yeah. That's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going into this just very like what Ridley Scott did with the last 2 with Prometheus and Covenant. Just so much stuff, so much stuff jam packed into those movies, and this just looks like a straightforward like haunted house picture again, which is what the original is. So you can kind of get back to that sort of just like simplicity, because I don't think the alien movies necessarily need to be like super duper complicated. So if we can kind of get back to simplicity and scary stuff, like, I'm here for it. And I really like we see more facehugger than we do a xenomorph, and whatever they're doing with the facehuggers in this looks fucking rad. You know, it looks like a bunch of fucking, I don't know, they look like there's a bunch of them all just like jumping on people and shit like that. So
like a swarm.
Yeah, that looks really dope, and it's like a fucking super small cast too. Something like 6 or 7 people at least that are on the IMDb page. So
I remember it only being like a handful of people that got cast.
But apparently the film's supposed to take place between Alien and Aliens, and involves a group of
Aren't they like cadets or something? Like
I
youngsters?
think what the synopsis said was that they're like salvagers that come across a derelict spacecraft of some kind, and that's pretty much it, which is super duper interesting. And I know from the little bit that I read today that there were a lot of steps taken to ensure continuity for the entire franchise. So I imagine that there are Easter eggs and blah 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 and who knows what else. But I'm happy with what I saw. Like, I was gonna see the movie anyways,
Of course.
but that's enough for me to go, all right, cool. I don't need to see anymore. Like, I'd rather go in blind. I don't want to have a full like 2.5 minute trailer show more shit than I need to know. And I'm sure I will still hear stuff on the internet, but try and go in as blind as possible. Yeah. Any other horror news or anything that you're aware of or that's on your docket?
Well, just to wrap up my thought on Alien Romulus,
Yeah, please.
I'm gonna go see it, and watching that teaser trailer, I knew you were gonna be pumped, and so I'm glad for that. It's not that I have a problem with them doing an Alien movie as a straightforward horror movie. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Like, the next Alien movie should be a straightforward horror movie. Like, it doesn't need to be massively over philosophical.
Yeah.
Existentialism and all that, and so I'm glad for that, but for me, it's just one of those things where I want it to be a straightforward horror film that's real good. I want it to be very, very good, and so I hope it is. I'm really rooting for it to be good. I would love to have a new Alien movie to be really excited to watch and to watch again and to watch again. Like, that would be really awesome. So I'm rooting for this movie hard. I just haven't been able to get myself super pumped yet, but I'll be there day one and rooting for it to be great. So. We'll see. Horror news. A movie that had some run on the festival circuit, Late Night with the Devil, is coming to theaters.
Yeah.
Kind of out of nowhere. That movie's got like 100% RT score with like quite a few reviews on there.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty excited to go see that.
I think it's dropping on Shudder same day too, I believe. I
think there's a couple weeks.
Okay, then there might be that gap there.
I think I'm going to see that tomorrow, actually. So
where is it playing?
I don't know. I think it opens in theaters tomorrow.
Got it.
If it's not tomorrow, it's next week. It's coming out real soon. I'm gonna go see it opening night.
Yeah, that was one that I've known about for some time. And the concept sounded really, really great. So
have you seen the trailer?
No, I already knew that I was gonna watch it. I already knew, and I was like, I'm just gonna go in blind.
I hadn't heard of it, and the trailer made me go, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Okay, I'm very excited for that.
There's been a couple of movies that I've heard about from other sources that what's upcoming and whatnot. Another one is called Sting, which is supposedly a foreign killer spider movie that's supposed to be very scary. That's dropping in April, I believe.
I think I've heard of
that. That's another one where I'm like, I pretty much all of these like kind of like, I don't want to say indie because I feel like they have a little bit higher budget than like indie horror, but there's another one, Longlegs from Oz Perkins. I've heard stuff about that, and that the little trailer snippets and whatnot have been very scary. I've stayed away from that because I'm like, I'm sold. Whatever it is, I'm sold. I'm gonna see it, and I've been having so much more fun. Like, unless it's like a franchise thing, like I've not felt this need to watch the trailers, because I've gone into a couple of films in recent past just blind, and it's been a really fun experience. But like, dude, watching that Alien teaser today was like almost like going to the movies for me, man. Because I love a good teaser if you can do it right, and I think they did that one right. Ghostbusters movie's coming out this weekend. Doesn't look like it's got super duper positive reviews by any means.
Nope.
I didn't have high hopes. You a big Ghostbusters fan? I can't remember.
I love the original too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked the latest one. Okay, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
I've only seen it one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
I don't feel like that's really a I don't think that is a well you have to go back to unless you actually have a good idea for what to do with that well, and it doesn't seem like right now they do. So
yeah, I agree. Well, speaking of wells, I'm a little bit thirsty, so we're gonna stop on by the bar and swing by Johnny's Well. We've done this dance before. You guys know how it goes. Kalen and I are both bartenders. We both enjoy ourselves a good cocktail and or just straight liquor. And we like to combine our love of alcohol and film. So what are we drinking tonight, Kalen?
we are drinking Bushmills Irish whiskey, the Black Label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called Black Bush. This was suggested to me by a gentleman at Bevmo. He didn't work at Bevmo. He was just shopping there. And I had a different bottle in mind, and he convinced me, mostly because I'm a fucking pushover. But yeah, it's tasty. Got a sweetness to it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty smooth going down, I think. There's a little bit of bite up front, but
Yeah, I mean, it's Irish whiskeys is friendly whiskey.
yeah.
You have your friendly whiskeys, your less friendly whiskeys. Bourbon and Irish whiskey are like, to me, are like the real friendly ones.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And since we are talking about Unbreakable, did you by chance come up with a cocktail and or beverage that you would serve while showing Unbreakable to your friends and family at your house?
Yes. So I am mixing up a Monte Carlo with this movie.
Oh, do tell.
A Monte Carlo, so those of you who know, or those of you who don't know, an old-fashioned is when you take whiskey, or another liquor if you're using another one, but historically you take a whiskey and you add a little bit of simple syrup to friendly it up just a tad, and you add a little bit of bitters to flavor it up just a tad, and you stir it up with some ice, and the chill and the dilution there opens that whiskey up a little bit more, and you end up with like a very magical little simple cocktail there.
Favorite cocktail ever right there.
The old-fashioned. Just simple and beautiful. Well, the fun thing about the old-fashioned template is that you can use other things for the sweet, and you can use other things for the flavor in order to recreate the exact same effect. So a Monte Carlo is a very simple drink. My spec is super simple. I get myself a nice big hunk of ice.
Mm-hmm.
I pick a nice, tough, spicy rye whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I pour 2 ounces of whiskey over the big rock. I pour half an ounce of, I'm not going to be able to think of it, Benedictine French liqueur, which acts as your sweetener and your flavor over the big rock. And I hit it with a couple of dashes of bitters. I stir that bad boy up, and I cut off a nice long slice of lemon peel. And the Benedictine's just a beautiful French herbal liqueur. If you're a longtime listener, you know how I feel about herbal French liqueurs in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just a great old-fashioned riff. It's just a beautiful drink. It's got a nice bit of complexity, but also a nice bit of simplicity. And, rye whiskey's nice and spicy, and it's tough. And I feel like for this movie, you want something that you're going to sip slowly, but is going to remind you that it's there the whole way through, because I think that kind of fits the way the narrative of this movie flows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I myself came up with a lavender lemon martini. So, you take probably a nice lemon flavored vodka, something like Absolute Limon is nice, or Kropmeyer's lemon vodka is also really nice. I'd say do probably about 2 ounces of that, probably about ounce of lemon juice, half an ounce of a lavender infused simple syrup, and God, it freaking escapes me now because it's the better part of 10 years ago that I worked at this martini bar, but there was this liqueur, and it was this beautiful, like purple, this lavender purple, and you would just do a dash of it. And
was it like a creme de violette kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so it almost had like this like sort of creaminess to it. Just very subtle though, but it made this like bright purple like hue in the drink. And then you just garnish that bad boy with like a lemon twist or something like that. But obviously, if you've seen the film Unbreakable, you know that one of our characters is a big fan of the color purple. So a new feature film presented by Steven Spielberg.
That's right. And Oprah, y'all.
But yeah, I think that that suits. It's a pretty beverage, and it's also tasty. So
Sure.
I like yours, the long hard sipper, because I feel like we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. You're definitely
yeah, those are two
David
different
Dunn
drinks
right there, and I'm over here in the world of Elijah Price.
Definitely, that's awesome.
You know, I like to have snacks when I'm sitting at the bar. I was out with my buddy the other night, and we were sitting at a bar, and I got one of those tasty big pretzels from a restaurant we were at called Finney's. You know, no free plugs. They're definitely supporting our podcast. But Kalen, would you consider this an eating movie? I feel like a lot of the horror movies that I watch and that we talk about on the podcast, like I don't want to have like a meal because I'm afraid of seeing like some pus shoot out of somebody's eye or something like that. But do you consider Unbreakable an eating film? I
think it's just fine as an eating film.
Yeah.
But you need to have easy food to eat because you got to have your eyes on the movie. You know? I'm just saying, like, you can't be cutting up a fancy dinner while watching this. You have to have your eyes on the movie. Yeah. So maybe finger food. Yeah. And I wouldn't recommend being still actively eating when you get to the third act.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because as I told you off mic, I watched about 85% of this movie last night before I decided that I had like 10 minutes left. Mm-hmm. I had like 10 minutes left in the movie, but arguably the most crucial part of the film. Yep. So I turned it off and was like, I'll finish it in the morning. Made myself a big old breakfast, hash browns, scrambled eggs with ground up sausage and sourdough toast with peanut butter and a nice red Honeycrisp apple along with my coffee and milk. And I sat there and watched I rewound it a bit, so the last 15 minutes of the film. Yes, definitely was a chore to, you know.
Yeah. Hey, you got all that stuff to do with all that food, right? You're like, wow, this is a lot of interesting food. Yeah.
Thankfully, the TV that I had I took it up to the guest bedroom. I put everything on a tray, like I was giving myself fucking breakfast in bed, which I was. But yeah, thankfully the TV in the guest bedroom's massive, so like I can just like kind of glance up and get the whole thing. But yeah, okay, cool. Unbreakable, officially an eating and a drinking movie. So without any further ado, we're gonna start talking about this flick, and we're gonna go over the plot and the production and maybe some of our characters in a section called blah blah blah. You've seen it all before. What? All right, so Kalen, while I pull up all this stuff on the computer that I should have had ready to go to begin with, why don't you give your best breakdown of the plot of Unbreakable?
Sure. So, Quick disclaimer: if you haven't seen the movie,
Go watch the movie.
pause this.
Because we're gonna
And subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating.
Yes.
Go watch the movie, and then come back and watch this, because this is you owe it to yourself to watch this movie without having every single beat spoiled for you.
Absolutely.
It's too good of a movie, so please go do that first. So that's your warning. Pause right here. The plot of this movie is a early middle-aged man named David Dunn is in a train crash, and we open the movie with him inexplicably being the only survivor of a train crash that brutally killed every single other passenger aboard the train. And that's kind of our inciting incident is right there. The movie opens with the inciting incident of, okay, this guy survived this train crash. Nobody else should have. Why?
Yes.
And for a really, really simple plot breakdown, it's unraveling that question of who is David Dunn? Why did he survive this train crash? And you're unraveling that mystery with his wayward wife and son, his family, and a new friend. And that's the pitch.
Yeah. Solid. I don't think I could have done it better myself, actually. Actually, I know I couldn't have done it better myself. That is the summary. Our cast of characters, pretty small cast, all in all. We have Bruce Willis as David Dunn, former football player, and let's see, we have Samuel L. Jackson as Elijah Price, a comic book theorist. Robin Wright, formerly known as Robin Wright Penn, as Audrey Dunn, David's estranged wife, and Spencer Treat Clark as Joseph Dunn, David's son. So I'm gonna read the production history, and this is going to be pulled from Wikipedia. So big shout out to anyone who has contributed to the Wikipedia page for Unbreakable. All right. Production. When M. Night Shyamalan conceived of the idea for Unbreakable, the outline had a comic book's traditional 3-part structure. The superhero's birth, his struggles against general evildoers, and the hero's ultimate battle against the arch enemy. Finding the birth section most interesting, he decided to write Unbreakable as an origin story. During the filming of The Sixth Sense, Shyamalan had already approached Bruce Willis for the lead role of David Dunn, with Willis and Samuel L. Jackson specifically in mind for the 2 leading characters. Shyamalan began to write Unbreakable as a spec script. During post-production on The Sixth Sense, Jackson recalled meeting Willis in a casino at Casablanca while he was on vacation prior to Unbreakable's production. Willis told Jackson that he had just finished filming Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense and told Jackson about the new script that was written for both of them. With the financial and critical success of The Sixth Sense on August 1999, Shyamalan gave Walt Disney Studios a first-look deal for Unbreakable. In return, Disney purchased Shyamalan's screenplay at a spec script record for $5 million. Yes, not too bad.
Good work if you can get it.
He was also given another $5 million to direct. Also, good work if you can get it. Disney decided to release Unbreakable under their Touchstone Pictures banner. It also helped Shyamalan establish his own production company, Blinding Edge Pictures. Julianne Moore was cast as Audrey, David's wife, in January 2000, but dropped out in March 2000 to take on the role of Clarice Starling in Hannibal. Robin Wright Penn was cast in her place. Principal photography began on April 25th, 2000, and ended that July. The majority of the filming took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the film's setting.
Shyamalan and cinematographer Eduardo Serra chose several camera angles to simulate the look of a comic book panel. Various visual narrative motifs were also applied. Several scenes relating to Mr. Glass's character involve glass. As a newborn, he is primarily seen reflected in mirrors, and as a young child, he is seen reflected in a blank TV screen. When he leaves his calling card on the windshield of David Dunn's car, he is reflected in a glass frame in his art gallery, and he is reflected in a glass frame in his art gallery. Jesus Christ Almighty! Sometimes there's like a comma, and you're like, "Am I supposed to be reading this the way that?"
Sometimes it's written a little bit sloppy on Wikipedia. Yeah.
Jackson requested his walking stick be made of glass to make his character more menacing. Using purple as Mr. Glass's color to David Dunn's green was also Jackson's idea. Mr. Glass's wig was modeled after African-American statesman Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
As he does in his other films, Shyamalan makes a cameo appearance. He plays a man David suspects of dealing drugs inside the stadium. Shyamalan said he wanted to market Unbreakable as a comic book movie, but Disney, which had not yet bought Marvel Comics, preferred to advertise it as a supernatural thriller like The Sixth Sense. More than 15 minutes of footage was deleted during post-production. These scenes are available on the DVD's release. Okay. So, that was kind of what I garnered earlier today when I was kind of like reading that he pretty much had this ready to go right out the gate after he finished The Sixth Sense. And the other thing that I read that was not listed here is that this film had a production budget of $75 million, which is still more than the production budget of both of its sequels combined.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing when you think about how good Split and how good Glass look and how much more, I would say, action-oriented both those films are.
They both have more, like, action effects, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I would say more locations, too. Like, when I read that, I was actually kind of surprised because this doesn't... I don't want to say it doesn't feel like a $75 million movie. There's...
I would say it doesn't totally.
Yeah, like, it's not that it doesn't look...
It looks great.
And feel like a well-made picture, obviously. It just doesn't seem like there's enough going on to warrant that. Because this, spoiler alert, folks, is a thinking man's superhero movie.
Absolutely.
So, I think that's pretty much like all that, we need to really go into as far as behind the scenes stuff. We'll talk more about how the film was received and whatnot later on. But that, I think, brings our audience up to speed on the film itself, the plot, and the production. So I think it's about time that we jump on over to the good stuff. So here are the good stuff, aka the stuff we liked. We talk about the stuff we like about this movie. And settle in, folks. We're going to be here for a minute.
Yeah.
Kalen, please take it away. Hit me with one of the things you liked about Unbreakable.
Man. It's tough to know where to start.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
So Johnny knows this, and I guess if you're a long-time listener, you know this. I am a comic book person.
Mm-hmm.
I am, in fact, kind of like Elijah Price in the degree to which I am a comic book person, right?
I wish you had as much money as he did.
Me too. I mean, Johnny's been to my apartment. He can attest to. There's comics there, is what I'm saying.
There is a substantial folks. I walked in and I was like, he's got books on books on books, and it's freaking amazing. He has so many books that, like, he's got a nice apartment, but there's more books than wall space, basically. I freaking love it, but there are these encyclopedia-sized things that have Marvel comics and DC comics written on them, and I'm like pointing at them, and I'm like, Kalen, what are these? And he's like, they're comics. And I'm like, no, they're Bibles, you dipshit. I don't understand. Comic is a little thin piece of paper that opens up like this.
Yes, they are mini comics in those books.
Yeah, it's all the comics. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, he is the most comic booky guy that I know in the best way.
So I'm a big comic booky guy, and also, like, I'm a big film guy. And in the year 2000, if you were even as a tween who loved comic books and movies, there was nothing like this had ever been done before.
No.
So...
Well, also, like, paint the landscape of comic book movies. This is pre-Spider-Man.
This is the first... I mean, this is the first one in some ways. Like we had... Okay, in the year 2000, you had, like, 3 legitimate comic book films ever as, like, actual feature film presentations. You had, maybe 4. You had Richard Donner's Superman in 1978.
Sequels, yeah.
And the sequels, but only the second one of those had any real credibility as a movie.
Indeed.
You had Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. You had 1992's Batman Returns. In both cases, the original Donner Superman, the original Burton Batman, the sequel was not as well received as the first one, but still had some acclaim.
Yes.
And then you had 2 god-awful sequels that nobody liked that kind of hurt the legitimacy of the concept of the comic book on screen. And then you had nothing. You had Blade, which people didn't even know was a comic book movie. You had The Crow, which people didn't even know was a comic book movie. You had things inspired by comics, but the idea of a comic book movie was kind of laughable. And it wasn't until that year, 2000, that we got the very first contemporary superhero film, Bryan Singer's first X-Men,
yes.
which was that's the original prototypical modern superhero movie, kind of where it all started. And then Sam Raimi in 2002 took it to another level. But nothing like that had been done before. And certainly in, like, a serious movie made for adults, with adult writing and adult actors and, like, real craft on hand that respected comic books. Like, nothing like that had happened before. And also, when you go into this movie, like, I didn't go into this movie knowing it had anything to do with comic books or superheroes.
Yeah,
it
well,
was
obviously,
just a movie.
it was not marketed.
This was marketed as, like, a horror film.
Yeah.
It was marketed as a horror film, which was interesting because, I mean, it's horror adjacent.
Yes.
But it's not an outright horror film. And they sold it like it was going to be like the next Sixth Sense. And it was a different kind of movie than that. You know what I mean? So going into it, you have this very sort of adult thriller. And then suddenly you have this guy like, I'm very keen on comic books. And you're like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, unlike anything before, and in some ways unlike anything since. Really, I mean, difficult to pin down in that way, and there's so much to like about this movie. This movie has beautiful cinematography, it has beautiful, like, use of color and the way that it's shot and the way that it's written. There's a lot to get into, yeah.
See, I have all of those things listed because this morning it was just like, I was like, well, what do I like about this movie? And when you like a movie like how we like this movie, it is difficult to pin down because you're like, well, the writing's good, the acting's good, the direction is good, the cinematography is good, the score is good. Like, you just start listing everything.
Right.
And you're like, okay, now how do I
Where do I
talk about
start?
this? Yeah.
It's almost like you want to just, like, start telling the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, essentially,
here's
you
the
kind of
movie.
have
Here's
to.
what I liked. Yeah.
Like, when I was watching it last night, I was like, well, I gotta talk about this, and I gotta talk about this, and I gotta talk about this. Clearly, I gotta talk about this. I guess I can, like, just start, like, this is the easy way to do it, is just that I love our introduction to David Dunn, because he is immediately introduced as, the way he's introduced is very, very interesting, where he is on a train. You can tell he seems very unhappy, and he is by himself, and then immediately a beautiful woman comes and sits down next to him. It's a shot where she's placing her bags up in the cab of the train, and as she's doing so, her shirt goes up and you see a tattoo on her belly, and it is in that moment that David Dunn removes his wedding ring and quickly puts it in his pocket. So right out the gate, we're led to believe that this is an unsavory gentleman.
We sure are.
And in that whole sequence that he has, eventually the conversation develops between the two of them, and starts off, casual enough, but eventually he makes the woman feel uncomfortable. And then she gets up, she moves away, and he puts back on his wedding ring. That I would say that interaction is a moment of like if you're a married guy, like you probably check to see, because you probably check to see if the person's wearing a wedding ring, which like I was just watching the scene unfold, and then when she says I'm married, I looked at her finger. I was like, "Oh, dude, that rock's fucking huge!"
Right. And it's on the hand that's closer to him too.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So like, I imagine that would be something that you would key in on as a married person, because this is like in a weird way, like it is kind of like your armor. Like people see this and they don't really hit on you, bother you, or anything like that, because they're like, oh, this person's taken. So, him as a married man, you would think he would key in on that. But that whole interaction is really, and I will say this for the rest of the podcast, like very believable, very realistic.
100% good.
And you just like cringe when he asks her like, how long are you going to be in Philadelphia? You're like, oh no, bro. And then she gets up, she walks away, he puts back on his wedding ring. And the way that whole scene is shot, it's between two chairs, and it's just going in the open spaces between. Mm-hmm. And genius way to do this, and he does a lot of stuff like this in this movie. He does so many creative camera angles that it almost becomes, by the end of the film, it almost works against itself, because you start to notice how creative they are. But in that sense, it's a little girl sitting on the other side of the chairs.
That's a great reveal.
Yeah.
Watching him get rejected like a total loser.
Yeah.
Such a great reveal. And like, dude, it's embarrassing. Like, you feel the cringe for him. I mean, if you've ever been a single man for any amount of time in your life, you've probably had some embarrassing interactions with people, and that's okay. But like, it's a particularly embarrassing interaction. She gets up and like literally leaves. Like, I don't even want to sit next to you. Like, You're so pathetic. We see him put his wedding ring back on. He looks sad the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, sad as shit. And we are basically introduced like to this guy who, from jump, we're like, what a loser.
Yes.
Like, what a loser. Probably cheating on his wife.
Yes.
Totally got rejected. Looked awkward. Like, what a total chud.
Yeah.
Just the least, like, flattering, and certainly not like a heroic way to introduce your lead in a movie like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Well, there's one line in there too that's subtle that I love so much. He hands her a sports magazine, and she says that she's a talent agent for athletes.
Yeah.
And she starts talking about this kid who's a cornerback at the local university, and he's 220 pounds, and he can run the 40 in 4 point whatever seconds, something very impressive. And she says, "You like football?" And he says, "Not really."
Yeah.
And they just move on with the conversation. And it's later revealed that he was a standout star football player at like a major university in his youth. And I just love the like not really and like moving right on from that.
See,
it's a great touch to me.
It's been a minute since I had watched this movie, and as I told you last night, I wasn't exactly in the best state of mind when I sat down to watch this. So like when he said not really, I was like, guy doesn't like football. What do you know? And I just forgot what a part that was, and then I was like, 15 minutes later into the movie, I was like, oh yeah, no, he's got a complicated relationship with football, but that was genius. Also, there's the other bit where, also funny in retrospect, is when she says that she's a talent scout, his first reply is, "Oh, I'm thinking about getting into synchronized swimming," which, as we find out later, he
does not swim.
He does not do well with water.
Right.
So
and he tells her that. He says, "I'm afraid of water. You think that's a problem?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which also like planting the seeds for the story, right? Like first interaction in the movie, we're talking about football. We're talking about water. We're keying in on what's going on with his family. Like right away. God, it's such rich storytelling.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I agree.
Right from jump, we're like layering it all in there.
Yeah.
Like, no wasted movement.
And that's like, and I mean, we will continue to go back to this, but like, as I've stated before, like, the writing in this film is, and I mean, if we're being honest, like, any film starts with a concept and then goes to the writing. Yep. So, the writing is the basis of this entire film, and it is spectacular.
Yep. Unbelievable.
Just the layers and the foreshadowing and the attention to detail in just dialogue alone is so insanely impressive. And again, like, you tell so much in that first, like, 5 minutes.
5 minutes or something, yeah.
And I mean, again, that's not even our opening. We open with the birth of a little black baby in the back of a shopping center or a shopping store or something like that. And the doctor comes in and the mother's like concerned about the crying, but she's still really happy about her baby.
Right. She's mostly happy.
And the doctor holds the baby and begins asking the women, "Did you drop this baby when he was born?"
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the baby's arms and his legs are broken.
Right.
And the doctor's horrified. And that's how we open. And then it goes into...
all of that shot in a mirror, by the way.
Yeah. Genius.
Yeah.
Genius. Yeah. And, like, again, as it was stated in the production notes, that a lot of the stuff that they're doing with the camera with Elijah Price being reflected in glass, just...
yeah.
Think of how much... like, how long would you have to, like, you personally, how long would you have to think about a story to come up with all of those details and enact them? Like, it's so insanely impressive.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, and this is kind of one of those things, too, about why I don't take everyone's opinions on movies the same way. I'm sorry if I sound like an elitist or a snob or something. I'm not. I don't take everyone's opinions exactly the same way. Because if you've never tried to write anything, it's so easy to watch something like that and tell yourself that that's easy.
Yeah.
That is not easy. Like, creating something with that kind of detail and that kind of structure and that kind of integrity and payoff is so incredibly challenging to do. And most people just can't do it at all.
And to do it in a way that, like, again, I've seen this movie a handful of times. And to do it in a way where, like, I'm not even thinking about how the dialogue is affecting what's going to happen in the rest of the film. I'm just thinking about how it's playing out in the scene. Because I'm so engaged in the scene.
Right. Because the scene is,
it's that good. Uh-huh. So, like, I'm not thinking about, oh, yeah, the foreshadowing of the water thing. Like... like this, that, or the other, or the football thing, like all those things. I'm just sitting there watching the movie because it's that enjoyable. Like that takes some sort of creative talent.
That's talent. Yep.
And I mean, then the train crashes. That's
the train crashes. That lovely woman we met is dead.
Yeah. So is that
So is that poor little girl. God,
Yeah.
That's dark.
That actually hit me at some point. I was like, fuck, that little kid's dead. And we have that wonderful scene with him and the doctor where, it does, there is that little bit of, there are moments of, for a movie that plays it so subtle, every now and then there's a little bit of dialogue that you're like, all right, that is a comic booky line where the doctor's like, the reason I'm looking at you like this for two reasons. One is this and da 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 da, and two, I don't know why you're alive, basically. Right. And like there's this like sort of like melodramatic heft that
definitely.
Again, had this been in like X-Men, that would feel like so much like that world because we have not quite yet been introduced to the reality of what David Dunn is.
Sure. Yeah.
This doctor is so perplexed.
Part of the fun of the movie is that you're not.
Yeah.
It's not uncovered for you for a long time, and you spend a lot of the movie not sure.
Yeah.
That's part of the point to me anyway. Is that you don't really know until you know. Like, you're not sure until you're sure.
And I mean, you go on that journey with David.
With David, Right. That's
when he is sure, that's when the audience is like, well, I think
we figured it out now.
Yeah, I think there's a point where, well, we can get there.
We don't need to skip ahead of that. Yeah, that's okay. But I just thought, I actually love the way the doctor says that because it is a more dramatic line. It is kind of a movie line. But it's also like, crazy shit happens. Yeah. And sometimes doctors are shocked.
Yeah,
and like,
it's very true.
And so, like, I still believed it. Like, because, like, dude, a train crash that kills everyone involved and someone miraculously walks away. Like,
without a scratch. Yeah.
And I also, like, I felt like he earned it because he set it up so well because it's like, the doctor doesn't just walk up and go, how did you survive the train crash? Yeah. He's like, how are you feeling? Yeah. And then he's like, was your family traveling with you? Like, that's the first thing he's worried about. What would be the first thing the doctor would be worried about? Yeah. Like, am I about to have to tell this guy that his whole family's gone? Yeah. And he says no, and the doctor's like, okay, well, now I'm relieved.
Yeah.
And then he explains it to him, and all of that is shot over a patient in the foreground who seems to be dying from injuries sustained in the train crash.
Yeah. And I do love that last dialogue, and he's like, it's you and one other guy, and within the next couple of minutes, you are going to be the only survivor. And then we get the again, just masterful, like, stuff with him and Joseph and Audrey where his son is so happy to see him okay, and there's a hesitancy with the wife, and you're like, well, okay, clearly they're having problems. So he's not just a scumbag. Well, maybe he is. We don't know for sure because, but then you kind of slowly begin, it unravels that like they're distant. They're sleeping in separate rooms and everything.
Well, and she immediately lets go of his hand.
Yes.
In the hospital, Joseph puts their hand together.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he turns around, they uncouple their hands like that. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So there, and even that says that the son knows there's a rift.
And he's not
cool with it. Exactly. Yeah. So, again, just the attention to detail. That is like one thing that I want to talk about, specifically because I feel like I'm worried that we're just gonna go beat by beat through this the whole movie.
That's what you gotta do.
But the big thing that I took away from this, I've taken away from it every time I've watched it, but now it's different. Is the father and son dynamic?
Oh yeah. I don't even have a kid, and I caught that differently than when I watched it the first time.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always looked at Bruce Willis. There's something about Bruce Willis that really reminds me of my dad. I think it's like the short, stocky nature, and there's like a general vibe to like the way he says things and the way he he acts that has always kind of reminded me of my dad. So like that.
And your dad's got some of that Bruce Willis gruffness to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly back when I was younger, I think he's softened up a bit in his old age. Don't come at me, Dad. I'm sure you can still kick my ass. Yeah. So I think I related a little bit to the kid. I think there was almost like why doesn't the kid just shut up about it? Like sort of vibe like that I thought about when I was younger. It's like probably because I was like I would have been worried to keep pressing the subject with my dad, you know?
Yeah, his dad was nicer than yours.
Yeah, now watching it, I just see my son, you know? I see that relationship with me and my kid, and like, I fucking love the part where we see like Joseph lying in bed with David a couple of times, having fallen asleep there and everything. The best one is I love when David's like reading the paper and he puts it down and he's just like right there, and he almost doesn't even know he's there. Like when he puts it down, he sees him, right? Sort of a deal. But I love that because at the end of the day, this is a very complex superhero origin story, but it's also like a boy who is so in love with his dad, you know, and is so proud of his dad, and that does really come to fruition in that final scene at the breakfast table. And I love that. That's such a great scene, and the two of them, I mean, I have always fucking loved, even like the scene that always stuck with me for years and years and years after I watched it for the first time and only watched it that one time up to that point was the weight room scene.
That's a great scene.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I fucking love that scene, and just their whole dynamic of how much weight did you put on?
Yeah.
You put too much weight on. Like, and knowing that as like a person who has lifted weight and how dangerous that actually is, you know, you go, oh, fuck, kid, what the shit?
Right.
And then he's like, let's put a little bit more on. That scene just gets progressively funnier and funnier.
And more fun, yeah.
And then, you know, you see the fucking paint cans.
And it was funny. Sandy said the most unrealistic thing about the entire movie, like the biggest suspension of disbelief, is that a man is laying back for a bench press and he doesn't know how much weight's on each side. Because every dude always wants to know exactly how much he's about to put up. And I was like, that's a good point. Yeah, it's fine. It works for the scene, but I just thought that was funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic scene. I love that scene as a kid. I love the dialogue in that scene as the kid's racking the weights. He goes, hey, Dad, do you think you could have beat up Bruce Lee? And he goes, no. And he goes, I mean, if you do karate. And he goes, no. And he goes, what if you're really mad at him and he's not allowed to kick? And he goes, no, Joseph. It's perfect.
It is, yeah. I was smiling at that, and because that is a smart man right there. Like, I love the kid because, again, like, it's like the little kid in all of us are like, oh, you don't want me to get mad because I'll show you. He's like, what if you're really angry?
Really
I'm like,
mad? Yeah.
Like, yeah, that would make it worse.
Yeah. Exactly.
I would do even more stupid things and get my ass beat even worse.
That's right. I'd have a calm head if I'm going into a fight with a man like Bruce Lee. Yeah. That weight room scene, you know, it's funny. I also have one critique, and this is the dumbest critique. It's the dumbest, weakest critique, and I'm an idiot. I wish the weight was just a little bit more.
Oh, I thought so too.
I don't believe that any collegiate star football player has never attempted a 250-pound bench press.
Yeah.
And nobody is concerned that maybe they have superpowers because they repped 350 a couple times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, I get it, too. Like, this movie isn't for just you and me. It's for the whole world. And most people have never attempted a 250-pound bench press. Certainly in the year 2000, right? Lifting culture has gotten much bigger.
Yes, absolutely.
And most people cannot rep 350 for, like, 4 easy reps. Like, most people cannot do that. But I would have appreciated it just a tad more if it was an actual weight where you would, like, just the right amount of weight where you might wonder, but you couldn't be sure. Because like, if it's 1,000 pounds and he's repping 1,000 pounds, like, okay, you have superpowers. But if it's 350 pounds, it could just be that you're like this really athletic guy who played football and you've been benching your whole life and you've just never actually pushed yourself and checked that out.
Yeah.
So I would have just loved it if it had been a little bit more weight.
Yeah, that was, I remember when I went back to it. Because in my mind, it was a substantial more amount of weight. And then, like when
I'm pretty sure you can rep over 300 pounds, right?
No, so here's my thing. Like, I don't ever ask for a spot, so
you never push it.
I am always at a spot where, like, it's, like, comfortable enough that I can do some reps and not kill myself. So it's been a long time since I've pushed myself to even try that.
Right.
But you know, I see fucking youngsters,
big dudes in the gym,
like guys that I'm like, yeah, that's clearly like a 21-year-old, and I couldn't do 3 plates when I was 21. So like these guys are, lifting culture is different.
Yeah. Well, that's a big thing. Lifting culture is way different.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Way more people lift, and way more people lift way heavier than they used to.
Yeah, and I was just like, back in 2000, that probably could have been the number that made you question it.
In 2000, you didn't know a lot of dudes who could bench 350 pounds.
Yeah, let alone like a 40-something who was working as a security guard. So,
100%.
In those terms, yeah, but like, I agree. Had it been 550 pounds, that would have been you'd been like,
wait a minute.
Fuck?
Yeah. So there's a great scene in the deleted scenes, and I watched the deleted scenes.
I did not watch the deleted scenes.
So only one of the deleted scenes really stands out to me, and it's this one. It's just he works at the university stadium. He slips into their weight room, and it's there's a bench and there's a whole weight room full of young men who are on the football team, big buff dudes, having fun, and they're talking very loudly. And then it just cuts to David Dunn quietly, like the sound turns off and you just see David Dunn putting on, I think he puts on 5 plates. And he gets under it and he reps it out, right? He hits like 8 reps or something like that. Something that if you did that with 5 plates and you'd never done anything like that before, you would actually be like, okay, that's pretty weird.
Yeah.
And then when he stops, he gets up, he sits up, he turns around, and all the young men who had been horsing around and having fun after their football game, they're all just standing there watching him, like, whoa, like that old security guard just repped out like 500 pounds. He's talking about how he had that in there for the reason we're kind of discussing.
Yeah.
Of like wanting it to be like a more like, for it to be a weight where you'd actually be weirded out by being able to lift it. But he was talking about how like, for the sake of keeping the movie tight, it accomplishes the same thing that first scene accomplishes narratively. And I'm like, damn it, Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Why are you always right?
He absolutely, like, it, even hearing it sounds great, but it is
super
redundant, you know?
100%.
But that's great scene. And I mean, we got to talk about the ending too. So like, what was your thoughts the first time you watched the ending? How did you feel about that revelation?
I get goosebumps when I think about it.
Yeah.
It was fucking brilliant. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, like this, like, okay, so at the end of the movie, it is revealed that Elijah Price was actually the one who caused the train accident. We talk about a hotel fire and a plane crash earlier in the movie. It turns out he caused those 2. He was looking for the Unbreakable one. He was looking for David Dunn, right? When he's giving his speech, and he says, you know in a comic book how you can tell who the villain's going to be? I was like sitting there like 12, 13 years old, like before he said it, like, oh my god, he's the exact opposite of him. Like, he's the exact opposite from the hero. And then in my head I'm like, and they're friends. And he's like, and they're normally friends like you and me. I was in cinematic ecstasy. It was beautiful to me. Perfect. And now that I know who you are, I know who I am.
Yeah.
And he says, I should have known David because of the kids. And I'm like, because they call him Mr. Glass.
Yeah.
And he says it, and I'm like, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. This is perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's perfect. I think it's fucking amazing. I think maybe the only thing you didn't need was the text.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that in our next section.
Cool. That's the only thing I don't love about that, but I think that scene is godly.
Yeah.
I think that ending is incredible. Yeah.
And I it really struck me this time. Because I could never remember, I know that David touches him, but I never remember how that goes down. And Elijah
did it.
Puts his hand out. He says,
because he needs that moment where, where Unbreakable meets Mr. Glass.
Yeah.
Because his life is now the comic book.
Yeah.
And his place in the universe makes sense.
So he needs
Mr. Glass wins.
Yeah.
Like Elijah wins. He gets what he wanted. The supervillain kind of wins the movie.
Yeah.
It's fucking brilliant. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
it's so good.
I mean, it is.
It's
because,
so good.
In watching the climax of the film, which is, when David realizes his place and decides to go out and try and help people, which I was watching today, and I thought about how that scene plays out, where it starts with a shoplifter, and it starts with racism, and goes to racism, then it goes to rape, and then it goes to murder, and I thought, I don't know, I had a very complicated, I wasn't even sure I was going to talk about this because I feel like it's sketchy territory, but just the idea that you see the progression of and he can go and stop any of those things or go beat up any of those guys, this, that, or the other, but he does go to the one that is murdering people. And ends up I always forget that there's kids.
Yeah, he saves the children in the house. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. He does do something, because I'm just he just goes to beat up the bad guy. Is that what happens here? I was like, oh no, he actually saves kids. This is good. He doesn't just get his ass kicked by a swimming pool.
Right. No, he does not. Not at all.
That is our climax of that picture, but it isn't really, that's as we're watching it for the first time, we think this is what everything's been leading up to, but it isn't.
Right.
The whole purpose of this movie is in that last 2-minute sequence.
2 minutes of the movie, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I read the Rotten Tomatoes consensus for the film, and it said the twist isn't as good as The Sixth Sense, but blah 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 blah, and I'm like, no, it's better.
It's better. it's fucking objectively better.
Yeah,
it's better. This is a better movie than The Sixth Sense too, and I love The Sixth Sense. This is a better movie.
I think the there's numerous reasons why this movie, I would say, is a cult film. Mm-hmm. The marketing not being the least of which, that's for fucking sure.
Yep. Thanks, Disney.
But I don't know, man. I think it's just so smart, and is great. Like, yeah, I don't think I can say it any better than what you did, because you had like a fucking awakening.
I had a spiritual experience. It's true.
Yeah,
I did. It was a movie that was made exactly for someone like me, and I was meeting it right where it was. It was very it was kind of like the pinnacle of experiencing storytelling for me.
Yeah.
That kind of moment. You have those sometimes. Yeah.
and it's interesting because Smallville comes out. Smallville comes out 2001. Is that when Smallville comes out?
I think Smallville came out in 01 or 02.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
I think it's 01. But that obviously deals with the origins of Superman and his friendship to Lex Luthor, which I don't think was at least wasn't like something that was portrayed in film up to that point, and I don't know how much of it was canon in the comics.
There was a history of it in the comic books. DC comics are a little bit different than Marvel. Marvel is just from 1961 to now is just one timeline and it all happened.
Yeah.
In DC, there's like the canon changes. They have big events that change the canon.
Yeah.
And there's different continuities and all kinds of weird stuff. DC comics are crazy. So whether it's canon or not, you could even to this day, you could argue with someone about that, even though right now in the current Superman comics, they portray Lex and Clark as former friends.
Yeah.
There are still people who are going to be like, I disagree.
Yeah.
But there was some history of that in the comic books. It wasn't in every portrayal of the comic books by any means. It certainly wasn't in the portrayal of the films. And Smallville definitely repopularized that concept.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, and watching the movie at the time, I was thinking about Clark and Lex and Superboy and Smallville. I mean the comic book version of all that. But it definitely repopularized it in a big way, and I personally think, not to get on a topic about Smallville, but I personally think Superman and Lex as friends is such a better story.
Yeah.
I think it's so much more interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it made for some of the best parts of that show as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
But I love that dynamic, and it makes it all the more, kind of like knife to the ribs when like David's like standing there talking to his Elijah's mom about everything, and then she's like, so like the two of you are friends, and he's like, yeah, I think we kind of are. Like David has come around to this whole thing,
and he's kind of having this moment of like wholeness in his life where it's like he has become who he's supposed to be. He has this friend he needed all along. He's reconciled with his wife. He's reconciled with his son. Like, he's got it all figured out. You know what I mean? Like, David's finally okay. And then it's like, bam!
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, I'm just gonna keep on going around in circles. If you have another, like, good thing that you want to, like...
I have some
please.
important stuff I want to get into.
Yes, please. Go for it.
Wait. Don't put that down yet.
Okay.
I gotta keep up. So... important good stuff. I'm just gonna look at a couple notes real quick.
Yes, please.
Because I want to be short. There's so many great little bits in this movie. The scene with Elijah as a young boy with his mom growing up in Philadelphia across the street from the park where she gives him the comic book is such a beautiful scene. I love it. I really love the portrayal of her relationship with Elijah. They picked a great... I don't know her name, the woman who plays Elijah's mother, but she is so good at being this like warm mother character. She really sells that role in a really impressive way.
Well, even further on in the sequels, like she...
Yeah.
It is Charlene Woodard.
Charlene Woodard. Well, big props to Charlene Woodard. She is quite an actor, and she's really great in that role.
About 5 years younger than Sam Jackson, actually.
Yeah, I knew that because he's playing like a 40-year-old character, and he was not a 40-year-old man at the time.
Yeah.
And in the scenes where she's younger, you can tell she's not
Yeah.
an old woman. Like,
Yeah.
she just isn't an old woman. Anyway, I thought she was really great. I thought that scene was great. And I feel like the way she... the way they foreshadow... He says in that scene, the kids at school call me Mr. Glass because I break like glass. This actually goes back to why that ending is so good. It's like, oh yeah, they told us. The movie told you that he was Mr. Glass. Like, it was right in your face and you didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I love it because I feel like anyone who says they got it is lying. Like, you didn't. You did not know that he was Mr. Glass, the supervillain. But that part is so great. There's a scene... So we never really dug any further into this, but really quickly, just to explain it to everybody, it's basically that David's wife wants him to leave. She wants him to move out because they're not getting along, and it's due to him being depressed.
Yeah.
And she feels like he regrets marrying her, regrets quitting playing football. Well, she doesn't know that.
She doesn't know.
But she feels like he is bitter about that.
Yeah.
About that he lost his football. He's with her. He works security. He has a kid. Like, he's unhappy with his life.
Yeah.
And she feels that he blames her and Joseph for it.
Yeah.
And so she's leaving him. It's not so much he's the one moving away, but it's really her kind of leaving him.
Exactly.
And so when he's taking off his ring in the train, he's not really being so much of a scumbag. This is a guy whose wife is leaving him, and he's just kind of lonely and. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like, again, that's something we find out throughout the course of the film.
Uh-huh.
But again, it's really genius storytelling because you think you're witnessing something naughty, for lack of a
something
better
nefarious going on.
So
here. And then you're like, oh, this
so
really
us
not.
as audience members that just like will fucking sit and watch, for lack of a better disaster, a train wreck.
Yes.
We key into that. That's a really genius plot device of knowing the human psyche of going, oh, we're going to watch something bad happen right now because he's being a bad man. So we focus in even more intently than we would have had he not.
It's brilliant storytelling.
Genius.
So there's a scene not much later in the film where she knocks on the door of the master bedroom where they used to sleep together. She now sleeps downstairs in a different room. And she says, I just have to know, it won't affect me either way, but I just have to know, has there been anyone else since we've been having problems?
She says it
And she says like
5 times.
Multiple times, it won't affect me either way. And he just says very calmly, no. And she breaks down crying.
Yeah.
And then gets herself together and says she wants to try again, and that she feels like it's really important that he survived and that they have to try again. And that he wants him to ask her on a date soon.
Yeah.
And she goes back downstairs. And in that whole scene, Bruce Willis doesn't do anything except for say no. And it's just Robin Wright by herself doing this great scene. And I think there's I love the sincerity of storytelling there. Yeah. I feel like Shyamalan is able to do real moments of real people in a way that not all directors do. Because his movie characters don't all feel like movie characters. Sometimes they really just feel like the way people are in awkward moments in their lives sometimes.
Well, I mean,
love that scene.
We'll get to this same thing when we cover Signs, but that is like the dynamic between Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix is one of the most believable relationships I've ever seen on.
You're like, oh, those guys are brothers.
Those guys are fucking brothers, man.
Yep.
And like even his most recent film, the Knock at the Cabin, I believe it is.
Knock at the Cabin in the Woods. Or maybe it is just a Knock at the Cabin.
Yeah, I think we're
we're conflating movies.
Conflating movies right there.
Yeah. Knock at the Cabin.
But that movie, I thought was a fine film, but like what made that movie good was the performances. The acting in that movie is so fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Bautista in particular is
bro.
so fucking good in that movie.
He's stupid good.
Like Oscar worthy. Like
it's funny because like I was watching wrestling when he became a big star, and I hated Batista the wrestler. I love Batista the actor.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. And just like he feels like a real person, like you're saying. Like this
he
real
does.
person that is caught in these extraordinary circumstances. And I mean, that goes back to like one of my favorite details about this film is just the subtlety in the storytelling, the subtlety in the performances. This is not a loud film at all.
Not at all.
Like, it is a film of like quiet conversations. Even Samuel L. Jackson, who is
a loud
famous
guy.
for being loud, had it with these motherfucking snakes. He's made a career out of it. You know, is dialing it down substantially. Bruce Willis, I feel like, is even more dour in this film than he is in The Sixth Sense, which I think is saying something.
I think this is one of the better performances of Bruce. Like, as an actual actor, this is one of the best performances of his whole
I agree.
career.
I was thinking the same thing when I watched it. Bruce Willis is so fucking good in all of this. Like, again, I'll go back to that opening scene. There is just so much going on in that opening scene. And it takes a hell of a performance to make John McClane look like a loser, you know?
Yep.
So
Sure does.
you're working against
Sure
yourself
does,
at that
man.
point.
Yep.
That's impressive. Yeah, his I love the date scene with him and Robin Wright. Like, it again goes back to that believability quality. It is so. I mean, I've been with my wife long enough that we've had our moments of kind of like, and I mean, you've been around for some of those.
I definitely wasn't going to say anything. But
Times where
Sure have.
I've made dumb decisions, and you know, and she's been very unhappy about that, and I gotta kind of work my way back to it. And you know, we've had those you know, first dates, for lack of a better word, where like we're trying to kind of get back in the swing of things.
Sure,
There is that awkwardness of like, where do we stand with all of this? So that and I love them, you know, just saying what their favorite color is and stuff like that. That's just like, again, like, if I ever try and get to know somebody, like people at work or stuff like that, I'll just randomly ask people that I work with, like, that I don't know a lot about. I'm like, what's your favorite color? Do you like sweet or salty? Like what type of music do you listen to? And they're like,
Sure.
why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, because I don't fucking know anything about you. Like, it feels weird.
Right.
So it's I like that when she's like, brown's still my favorite color. It's a little weird because who the fuck's
No
favorite
one says
color
that.
is
Yeah.
brown?
Well, his was rust.
Yeah. Which I think is actually a pretty color.
Sure.
It's funny because like a year later, Bruce Willis would star in The Kid, and his character's name was Rusty. So there you go, Disney fans, you're welcome. But yeah, I agree. Just the performances, and it's just genuine. Like,
She asks him, when does he think that they weren't going to make it? He's quiet for a moment, and then she starts to say you don't have to answer, and then he immediately has the answer.
Yeah.
Which I loved. And he says, I had a bad dream, and I didn't wake you up so you could tell me that it would be okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn. And yeah, I don't know if that's relatable to everybody, but that was relatable to me. And not that I wake my girlfriend up every time I have a bad dream, but just that, the type of relationship that they had. And after he saves the children, and he returns home, he goes in to the guest bedroom where she's sleeping. He picks her up. He carries her up the stairs into their bedroom. He lays her down on their bed. He lays his head on her and he says, I had a bad dream. And I love that moment.
Yeah.
It's like this moment of atonement and like their relationship sort of, he's kind of like, hey, fuck all that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're still married, and
Yeah.
I like that moment. It's a great capstone to everything he just went through, specifically in that scene.
Yeah.
Speaking of subtle moments, this is a real small one. When Elijah Price is initially very depressed because he thinks he was wrong, he discovers a comic book in a comic book store in a very hilarious scene, in a comic book store that looks the way that they did in the 90s, and that scene makes me feel a certain way, because they don't look like that anymore. And
yeah, I remember them looking like that. I used to go get like playing cards and stuff like that at comic book stores like that. Yeah.
Yep. And so he calls David and he says, I figured it out, when the bad guys ascertained the weaknesses of every good guy. Water is just your weakness. Water, it's like your kryptonite. And then he says, are you hearing me, David? And when he does that, the sound design changes. The sound design sounds like he's on the answering machine. And then when it says, are you hearing me, David? The sound design changes to him being in the room.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so fucking good. And I never would have thought of that. It's so perfect. And that's such a small thing that adds so much to a movie. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was something that happened in the editing room.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Shyamalan was like, what if we do it this way? Or even maybe the editor was like...
Right, I was going to say, that could be one of those things where the sound design guy was like, hey, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I'd say there's like dozens of moments like that throughout the film. I guess another big scene that like is like a big scene that is based off of a real life incident is the gun at the breakfast table scene, which is just genius.
I mean, that's a great scene, man.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. He's like, he doesn't know where I keep the bullets, and he's like, in your rookie of the year trophy, and you're just like, oh shit. And he's like, Joseph, did you load that gun? And you're just like, yeah. Great tension. Yeah.
Great, and him and Robin Wright are discussing something that I was like, I am disappointed that the conversation doesn't get to continue because he turns around and sees his son. But like, I get that. Like, I remember the first time I saw it as a kid, like, I didn't understand, like, I'm probably a little bit older than what Joseph would have been, because I think I saw it when I was about 14. Joseph, I would wager, is probably like 9 or 10.
I would say he looks 9 or 10 to me. Yeah.
But now like I said, like I said this on the podcast before, I've said it in my reviews, where like, if I see like a little boy in a movie, like immediately, like they're a surrogate for my son.
Sure.
Like,
absolutely.
So I see little Killian pointing that gun at me, and I just see a little boy that is confused, and like that scene takes on a whole new like light of like, my son's confused, but he's also about to kill me. Like, how do I handle this situation?
Right. It's very difficult.
And David is not convinced at that stage in the game.
Right. He doesn't. He's kind of the opposite of convinced at that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I'm just about to die because some idiot told my son I was a superhero. How stupid is this? You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And based off of a real life incident involving Superman icon George Reeves, in which a little kid pulled a gun on him when he was doing a show or something like that for a group of kids.
I had no idea.
And he was able to talk the kid down by saying that, yes, like,
the bullet will bounce off of me.
It'll bounce off of me, but it'll hit somebody else in the audience.
Jesus Christ. Sharp guy.
Well, you've never seen Hollywoodland, have you? With
you know what's funny is I've literally always wanted to. Like,
it's a good movie.
I've always wanted to watch that movie. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's subject matter. Like, classic Hollywood is interesting subject matter to me. I like Ben Affleck as an actor. Like, I'm interested in George Reeves.
Yeah. It's got Adrian Brody in it, who I think is supremely underrated, even though he has won an Oscar.
He was like an A-lister for like a while, and then he just kind of went away. It's kind of weird. But yeah, he was in the Shyamalan, The Village.
Yeah,
he's really good in that movie.
Yeah. Underrated one. We got to talk about that one too. It's
We
like
will.
I've only watched that one once, and I feel like it does not deserve the hate it gets. But I think there's been a little bit of a
pushback the other way.
Yeah, slightly.
So without getting too into that movie, I showed that to Sandy for the first time a few months ago, and when the credits rolled, she was just like, "People were mad at that movie." And I was like, yeah. And she was like, are they stupid? Like, that movie's great. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty great.
Well, I think if, like, at the time with the marketing and everything, that it's portrayed as this monster movie, like, whoever markets this movie is just did not
They
do a
were
good
just
job.
trying to sell Shyamalan as a bill of goods instead of as a filmmaker. That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they still are. Like, the man is, like, so unfortunately, like, anchored to twists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a couple of movies that I'm aware of that definitely did not have twists. Stuff like Airbender and After Earth did not do.
I haven't actually seen those.
I haven't seen them
don't
either.
Really
I've
plan to. So,
no,
yeah.
I've heard they're horrendous.
Real bad,
so
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
why would I? Adrian Brody.
The gun scene with Joseph.
Yeah. Great scene. Very, again, like I said, certain things just hit differently when you become like the adult in the room, you know?
I literally said to Sandy yesterday after the movie, I'm curious to talk to Johnny about how his perspective on the movie has changed now that he's the father of a young boy. But also, like, dude, like, just because I'm older, stories hit me differently than they used to. Like, I watched this movie and I'm closer to David Dunn than I am to... When I first watched this movie, I was closer to Joseph.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was closer to Joseph's age. It was more he was my point of view character.
Exactly.
Now I'm much closer to being David Dunn than I am to being Joseph. You know what I mean? He's much more my point of view character. I've noticed that with a lot of stuff I watch now. And especially stuff I watch that involves younger characters. And then there's a gruff old guy in the room. And I'm like, shit, that's me now. Like, that's the character I relate to the most. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially for you, having a little boy...
Yeah.
It's got to definitely change the way you see a movie like this.
Yeah. There was something else. I watch so many dumb movies that, like, usually
I know.
teenagers getting their heads sliced off and shit like that, so I don't really have to worry about that. But every now and then, yeah, there's stuff where, yeah, little kid or something like that, and like even if it's not necessarily a little boy, if it's a little girl, it's just like there's a child, and I feel an inherent need to make sure that they're okay, you know?
Sure.
And it's fucking weird, man.
Yeah.
You know me.
Yes, I do know you.
Even today, I was like eating my dinner right before you came over, and Celeste was like, yeah, you remember when you were a dick? Thought you didn't need one of those, and I was like, yeah, and it's the best thing in the world now, isn't it? Yes. It's the best thing in the world now, isn't it, Jonathan? Shut up! I'm trying to eat! But yeah, it's really altered my perspective, and like it just like I joke, it like makes me weak. Like I'm just like I can't ever think of myself as a tough guy now, because I'm always like this.
I still think you're tough.
Hey, thanks, pal. Thank you. At least one of us does.
He's definitely softened you up a little bit.
But yeah, I don't know. It's trippy because like in my mind, like it's weird because I'm the same age my dad was when I was Killian's age. Like
right.
that's
Yeah.
the exact age difference.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a trip. Yeah, so like
I mean, it's a pretty normal age to have kids, to be fair.
yeah, but I mean, just like the exact
thing, yeah.
You know,
like when Killian's
30
your age
years
now,
apart.
you'll be the age that your dad is right now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So like yeah, the 30-year difference is just kind of like it's wild, because when I think of how I saw my dad when I was Killian's age, I saw him as an adult, like as a man that understood and knew things and was smart and brave, and I don't feel any of those things about myself. I see myself as a 20-year-old kid still. Like, that's like, like, I know more and I'm better and I'm more mature than I was back then, and I'm a kinder, hopefully more generous human
I was going to
being.
say, someone who knew you when you were a 20-year-old kid, you're pretty different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It makes me feel good. But, like, in my mind, like, I'm still, like, I don't feel like how I saw my dad, you know. And I mean, that's the thing, when you become an adult, you realize that it's all a fucking facade.
Yeah.
That we're all pretending, you know.
So here's the thing though. We're getting way off topic, but
it's all within the realm.
No, sure. But here's the thing. You think that. So, like, I work with teenagers and I train with teenagers, and I
do too.
I know a lot of, but I also train with teenagers at my gym. I know a lot of teenagers, and you think like, oh, I'm still just a dumb teenager until you talk to dumb teenagers, and then you go, oh no, I grew up.
Yeah,
I grew up. I'm mature. I have a better understanding of the world. It's just not what I thought it should be.
Yeah,
like you just thought it'd be better than what it turned out to be. Like you thought you'd have more mastery. Turns out the world is a big, scary, dangerous place. Absolutely nobody's in control, and absolutely nobody has all the answers.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think part of growing up is understanding that.
Yeah.
And having the confidence to deal with it within the context of who you are and what you have.
Yeah.
I guess. Kind of like David Dunn.
I was going to say, we can bring it right back, because I feel like all of these things that we're talking about,
right.
David Dunn.
David Dunn. Yeah, it's like just kind of like David Dunn. Like, it's just kind of like that.
Oh, man. Well, we could fucking run in circles all day about how great this movie is and just keep on saying good stuff all day. But I think it's time, just for brevity's sake, because, you know, it's not like we're not going to be here for 3.5 hours as it is. We keep this train rolling. See what I did there? And hop on over to our next category, which will be very brief. The shit. Alright, here at The Shit, we talk about the stuff we didn't like. So, I feel like we've kind of hinted at a couple of things already. I'll just take it away with my big thing that I was dreading when I was rewatching it, because it is the only thing that just feels so not like a part of this movie, and I don't understand why it's in there, which is the freeze frame text at the very end of the film.
Yeah.
I think, and this is my pitch for how I would have done it better, in a movie that is fucking damn near perfect. When Jackson is doing his speech and everything, and he goes to like, I should have known, blah blah blah, freeze frames, David Dunn told the authorities about da 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 da, which led to the acts of terrorism, blah 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 blah, and then goes back to Sam Jackson. They called me Mr. Glass.
Yes.
Freeze frame.
Elijah Price is now in a hospital for
penitentiary. Completely unnecessary. Like, even if you just cut the text out and just like had him do that line of dialogue and it just like went to black, that would have been. I think that still would have been better.
I completely agree. That would have worked like perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like, just have that bit and end the movie there.
Yeah.
Audiences get real butthurt when you just tell them this is the ending and not everything resolves.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a studio note. I'm just saying.
I feel that. I definitely feel that, actually. Yeah. My pitch for how I would have made it just a little bit different is he still does the whole bit. He says, I should have known because the kids, and then when we cut back to the close-up of Sam Jackson, it's just padded walls behind him. And he's in a straitjacket, and he just says, they call me Mr. Glass. And, like, he's just repeating the phrase. Now, it would have essentially told the exact same narrative that he was caught and he was arrested, and then, we cut to black. I still think if you just have that dialogue without the text, it works better. But, yeah,
Sorry.
No. I agree that it most likely was a studio note of like
that
we need to resolve this.
Feels like an executive at Disney being like, he can't just not beat the bad guy.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I've been hearing a lot about studio notes lately, and they sound a lot like that. Like, I was recently listening to a podcast where Matthew Vaughn said he writes 2 scripts. He said he writes a script that's for professionals who want to make movies, and he gives that to, like, the actors, the producers, anyone who needs the script for actually working on the movie. And then he writes what he calls, and I'm not kidding, he said this on the podcast, something to this effect, he writes a fucking idiot script. And that's not something that an actor or a director would ever actually write or read, because it spells things out, and it's just dumb, and it's just not the way a script works. And he gives that to the executives, so they'll give him the money to make the movies. That text at the end feels so plastered on, man.
Yeah.
It feels so plastered on. I wish I could edit it out and see how the scene goes without it, because I just feel like it works perfectly. And I love the idea that the end of the movie is that Elijah Price is free. Because that text resolves a major issue. How does David prove he did that? What, because he's got clippings in his art gallery? That's not proof that he committed those acts. You're not getting somebody in prison based on him having newspaper stuff on his wall. Like, no jury's convicting on that. No DA's charging on that. So how did he prove it? I love the idea that it's unresolved, and now Elijah Price feels the need to be David Dunn's supervillain.
Yeah.
I love the idea that conflict is still in place at the end of the movie. That's an exciting ending.
Yes.
That's an exciting ending. So,
and it also goes back to what Shyamalan's original story was, which is
the birth of the superhero.
This is the start.
That's what it is. And this is the superhero, this is the supervillain, and I've just given you an origin story.
Mm-hmm.
That's the movie. That's what the fucking movie is. So, I don't even think they needed... I think your idea is good, but I don't even think they needed that.
Yeah.
Leave that shit unresolved. This is an origin story. This is the point.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, Jesus Christ, man, that's comic books. Comic books don't end with the bad guy defeated, everything wrapped up, and everything's going to be perfect now.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. It's always teasing the next conflict.
Thing. Yeah.
So,
No, I agree. You're probably right. Like, because to me, like, I was just like, why, Shyamalan? Like, why do you know that it's perfect?
Right. It's
up until that point.
Yeah.
Like, everything else, all the other, like I said, like, everyone in this movie, like, this is my only other note, and this is not so much a note. I just wanted to put it somewhere. I was like, everyone's so fucking mopey in this movie. Everyone is so goddamn sad in this movie all the time. But I'm like, that's also the movie, because where we pick our character up, he is lost.
Right.
And it shows you, like, not unlike, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
How one man's, life can affect the others around him so much. You see how David not fulfilling his purpose in life sends him spiraling into this depression that affects his wife, that affects his son, that affects the fucking weather because it's always raining.
That's right. What's that about?
So, like, all that has its place in this story, but, like, that text is just always really not sit well with me. But I mean, in an otherwise perfect film, like,
right? Yeah.
What are we talking about here?
2 seconds of imperfection.
Do you have any notes for me as far as bad stuff? Anything at all? Any big gripes?
No, I don't have any big gripes. All of my gripes of this movie are quite small.
Yeah.
They're all quite fucking small. I mean, I think it's really as close to a perfect movie as it gets. I think that it's really as close to a perfect script as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
I almost don't even want to say this. I do think you could have done, like, I think maybe I might have liked Julianne Moore more than Robin Wright. In that lead role, in that the leading lady role, I guess. But I mean, I think Robin Wright does a great job, and it's hard to imagine the movie without her.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I really See, I think for Julianne Moore, like, she's such a fucking strong person to me, and maybe not at this point in her career. I do think her taking on the role as Clarice Starling in Hannibal really does send her on this projection of these much more stronger women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she had done The Lost World a couple of years prior, which is just gung ho, like just like nonstop, like badass bitch in that movie, to a fault almost. Where she just getting people eaten by dinosaurs. But all that said, I think Robin Wright has such a vulnerability to her, while still like she feels like a very, very real woman who is
she does.
Still like in love, but just kind of like is just over it, basically, you know? And like if your husband was just like moping around all the time, clearly he's unhappy, but he's not.
And if you felt like he resented you and your son, like
exactly.
you'd get over it eventually. Yeah, 100%.
So she does. She's really good at being able to.
And Audrey's not. Yeah, and that's important too. Is like Audrey's not the bad guy here for sure, right?
Yeah.
Like she's just doing her best. Other than her absolutely. Oh, here's one note, and it's okay. It totally works for the movie, and some people are weird. Other than her absolutely nonsense stance on football.
Yeah.
She decided to date a star football player, but if he decided to continue doing the thing in his life that he was good at and that he loved, and that could have made us tons of money and granted us an amazing life, I wouldn't have been with him because I don't want violence in my life. Because I'm a physical therapist. I'm just going to work with people who do that all day, every day.
That's
ultimately fall in love with one of them and marry one of them, because that's what else would you do?
I'm gonna say you're in the business of making those guys feel better. So
right.
That is not exactly the opposite of what you do.
It's not. No.
But yeah, no. To each their own.
I know some people are weird, so it is okay. Like it's not like it's terrible, but that one is a little bit like, I don't totally believe that, but that's okay.
Yeah. I mean that
people do things I don't believe in real life.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other any like other random thoughts or anything like that you want to throw out? Any just like kind of like doesn't fit necessarily into bad or good, just like you were watching the movie and like stuff stuck out. I have one. When the murderer pushes David off the balcony. I feel like the murderer's been there for a minute. He probably knows that there's a swimming pool down there. I would assume he's scoured it.
Yes.
So he pushes him off, and then just goes and stands and is drinking the beer, like just like staring
on the corpse of a woman.
Yeah, just like doing that.
Shit's
and I'm like,
dark.
You didn't want to make sure the guy who just showed up in the house.
Right.
That was just my thought.
Do you remember the shot of David going under the pool?
Yeah.
Okay. I think he saw that and was like, he's dead. This is a guy who kills people pretty casually.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I think he saw that and was like, well, got that fucker. I'll figure out who that is later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's fair. It was just like, I just watched it. I was like, he's
just
so nonchalant. And I was
yeah.
just like, I just feel like I just would have gone, double tapped.
Yeah. So I just don't think he thinks that he can get out of that. And he also might not have been able to if the kids hadn't helped him, and he doesn't know that the kids are loose down there.
It's also just like so not important because it's the same thing as like me watching Jurassic Park for the 96th time and then being like, wait, wasn't the T-Rex just standing where the Explorer is now falling?
Wait a minute, how did he get over there?
The more you watch it, the more you just like pick up on just like the imperfections of film, and that's all it is. It's not a negative thing, it's just like a fun thing, That's all it is. All right, well, if you don't have any more random thoughts, then we are jumping over to our next news section, which we discuss some of the scarier things in this film. in a category called Truly Terrifying Tidbits. Here at Truly Terrifying Tidbits, we talk about some of the more disturbing or scary elements of a film. Unbreakable being a mystery thriller and not too much of a horror movie like we tend to discuss on this podcast. We are going to discuss scenes or sequences that are categorized as horror adjacent, though there are some certainly disturbing sequences,
very adjacent sequences
in this film. So, Kalen, take it away.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. There's a sequence in a train station after David Dunn has accepted that he is a superhero, for lack of a better word, where he is sort of psychically checking out the people around him. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of sequences in there that they're not exactly the first few aren't exactly horror sequences. They're just kind of disturbing.
It's real life horror.
Exactly. You know? Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's the kind of horror that's actually happening in the real world around you, like to people that you may know, kind of thing.
Every day, and to some extent, like, we're desensitized to it, I think.
Yeah.
Though, like, if you sit and, like, ponder the fact that, like a group of African Americans are walking down the street and then someone comes and chucks a bottle at their fucking heads.
Hits a woman in the head with a bottle
and
breaks it over her
go
head.
back to Africa. Like, how, like, just...
Well, like you said, that's... Sorry.
Like, yeah, like...
That's real life horror.
Yeah, that's, like, and why? Why would you... What would bring... What would make you want to do something terrible like that, you know?
There's also a sequence that, like, it appears to be like a college party or something,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a girl who's, like, passed out, and, like, a guy comes in, he's just like, oh, you've had a lot to drink, and then he just goes and, like, quietly closes the door, and you just kind of cut away knowing what happened there, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, that one's the one that, like, is probably the... Like, I want to just say, like, probably most common in that sort of realm. Like, that we, like, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of just, like, blatant, all-out racism, particularly now, because for some reason it's become socially acceptable in certain places of the country, which is obscene to me. But, like, quiet moments of... manipulation and molestation and taking advantage of certain individuals who are incapacitated. I feel like that happens.
It's always been pretty popular.
Yeah.
But I think maybe more people are aware of it than they used to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely a thing.
And so that one's just like really disturbing because the girl just doesn't even look like she's
unconscious.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty disturbing.
And then, yeah, obviously what we build up to is the big one. And this is kind of what I was like, this is a weird dynamic because I feel like in this day and age, this is kind of what I was referencing earlier, where it's like, it's a... Like, I don't know if there's anything, like, worse to, like, be labeled as, like, just, like, literally labeled as, like, in the Twitter sphere of, like, you're a racist or you're a rapist. Like, those two things to be labeled as are pretty much the worst thing that you can, like, put on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, murdering people is the worst of the worst thing.
Yes.
But the term murderer doesn't hold the same weight. Yeah. I was very much thinking about this because I was thinking about the progression of the people that bump into David and how he eventually decides to go after the murderer. And I was like, why doesn't the word murderer hold as much weight? And I think the what I came down to is that, like, most of us have had, mean thoughts about people in one way, shape, or form, but most of us aren't going to act on things, and we're all human. We all make bad decisions and think terrible things, but, like, very rarely do we act on them. And the idea of murder is just so cycled through film, television, video games, literature, like, that just the word murderer is just, it's almost like a boss villain, like, in a video game. It's just almost like becomes so, like if you say that guy's a murderer, like, in a prison, like, that's scary. You don't mess around with that guy. But if that guy's a rapist, fucking kill that guy,
Yeah.
And there's a weird sort of thing.
No,
so
I mean, you're making a bit. So here's this is actually kind of weird because, like, and this is not a soapbox I wanted to get on here, so I'm not really going to, but I've always kind of thought that prison justice shit was kind of just like a fake excuse to hurt people, because, like, if you were really, like, killing people who, like, were rapists or child molesters because you were trying to defend, like, what's right from what's wrong, you guys would all go and kill people who just, like, go and, like, murder innocent humans.
Yes.
Under any circumstances, right?
Yeah.
You would, but you don't. Yeah. So really what's going on here is really just kind of like a bullshit excuse to gang up and hurt people, because as people, we really love bullshit excuses to gang up and hurt people.
Yeah.
And this is all very dark subject matter. I took those scenes as those acts that we saw were in the past.
Yes.
Because what that guy had done to that family, he had already done.
Yeah.
So I took that as David Dunn looking at it like, what can I really do? Like, I can go after that racist person who assaulted that woman, and I can beat his ass.
Yes.
But is that going to stop him? Is it the right thing for me to do? And this is actually where you get into kind of the ethics of being a superhero. Can I just break his arms and legs and break his jaw and smash him to pieces so he can never hurt anyone again? Is that really the right thing to do? So I think that's kind of what's implied in those scenes, is sort of what could I do about that?
I was thinking about that,
and then he
too.
finds a scene where the ethics of doing something about it are not questionable, and there is something he can do about it.
Yeah, because that kind of went back and forth in my mind. I was like, this is a morally complex scene. It's probably more morally complex than most scenes you see in film today, because it's like, who do I punish? Who do I exact, like...
Who do I exact vengeance on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, vigilante justice upon. Like, and you're absolutely right. And that was my thought, too, which was like, he, in the vision, sees the murderer go into the house and push the guy in the house. He does not know that man is dead yet. He just knows that man has been...
He sees the body.
Yeah, but when he, in the vision, he doesn't see... He sees the body...
Oh, right, when he gets in the house.
When he gets in the house. So you're right, where, like, he sees someone, intrude upon someone's house and decides that, like, that... And probably more so, gets a feeling...
Right, understands
what the violence is in that man, you know? So that whole sequence is very unnerving, and then is only...
it's dark.
Is only, more so when, like, you realize that this guy has murdered a husband, has kids tied up, and... the mother tied up, and God knows what he's done to them, and like, you kind of get the idea that maybe the mother's alive, just the way it's shot. Bruce Willis does whisper her to be quiet, but, like, when he undoes her restraint, she does fall over, and we find out moments later in the newspaper that the parents are dead, and that 2 kids have been saved. And dude, like, the way it's shot, it's very bleak, it's dark, it's just...
The movie that is not exactly a sunshiny movie takes a very dark turn in that third act.
Yeah.
Like, that is, like, up to that point, you are not expecting that movie to go that dark, and then you're just like, damn. And that guy is menacing.
Yes.
Like, that serial killer is terrifying. Yeah.
Just the way he's like, it's very much like reminds me of The Strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did you do this? Because you were home. And he's like, I like your home.
Yep.
Like that's
Can
That's
I
it.
come in? Yeah.
Can I come in? I like your home. And it's just a very, like, I would have closed the door rather than trying to keep the screen closed. I would have pushed the door closed. But, you know.
I'm fighting the urge to say what I want to say.
Yeah. You know, but.
I would have beat his fucking ass.
Yeah. But, you know. That is also a substantially larger man than the man was in the house. You know?
Of course.
But
course.
Yeah.
It's very easy to talk about how tough you'd be if a murderer entered your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like.
But that and just that scene, his demeanor, the killer is just
very scary.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Very unnerving.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why you don't open your doors to strangers, kids. Keep your doors locked at all times, even if you live in a nice neighborhood.
That's right.
Because...
And learn to defend yourself, because you may find yourself in a moment where you need to.
Yeah, damn straight. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say.
I pray that you don't, but you might.
Knock on wood. Also, like, we talked about the ending, but we really didn't talk about the fact that, like, Elijah Price murders, like,
dozens like, and dozens of people.
Like, hundreds
Maybe
of people.
Hundreds.
Like,
yeah,
hundreds.
It's like, hundreds, yeah.
Because
the train
plane,
crash, the plane, a hotel.
Yeah, it's probably close to, like, 500 people that this guy murders.
God,
just straight up murders.
Terrible, yeah.
Like, that is...
And, like, a lot of them are by, like, fire.
Yeah, and,
like,
well,
Jesus.
you think about it, like, it goes back to the Joker's, like, speech in The Dark Knight, where he's like, yeah, if I say, like, a truckload of soldiers is going to get blown up, nobody panics.
Nobody cares.
If I say one little mayor will die, then everybody loses their minds. When you think about it, and there is, like, some expression or saying about, like, you know, like, one person dies, it's something, a bunch of people die, then it's like news or something like that. You know, one person dies,
it's a tragedy. 100 people die, it's news.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah,
and you do think of it in terms of, like, the little bits that we see from David are very, very disturbing because they're so personal.
Yes.
But the atrocities that Elijah committed are obscene. And I mean, you see it and that's another fantastic bit of acting from Bruce Willis. You see the hurt on his face. Like, what did you do?
Yeah.
You killed all of these people.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It is.
It's insane. Like, that's, as far as, like, think about this. Like, Kalen, think about every on-screen supervillain on-screen, just in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that we know about, like, the kill count that we know about, like, I can't think of any supervillains that have just flat out killed 500 people. Like, Thanos doesn't count.
Right. I was gonna say I sure can, but yeah,
that's you know, I mean, I guess he counts, but
generally speaking, you don't see that kind of mass atrocity.
Yeah,
from a
it's the hero always manages to stop them,
to save people. Yeah.
This is like Watchmen levels of, like, you think you can stop me? I wouldn't tell you my master plan if you could do anything about it. You know?
Yes, it sure is. It sure is.
Well, I'm a little tuckered out from all the scary and extremely dark shit
I have
in this movie.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So I personally am a big fan of superhero ethics.
Yeah.
Like I love it that Batman doesn't kill people. I think that makes Batman so
morally
much more
complex.
Yeah, it's so much more fun. But in this movie, I perceive that ending as David Dunn kills that serial killer.
Oh, yeah, he does. He snaps his neck.
And I'm totally comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a less fantastical story than Batman. It's so much more grounded in the mechanics of real life.
Well, yeah.
That part doesn't even, like... Well, I just think it's interesting because I'm the kind of guy that I'm like, well, would it be morally acceptable for a guy with superpowers to go around killing people he deems as bad people? And my gut reaction to that question is no.
Yeah.
But in that scene, I'm like, well, he had to kill that guy. He didn't know for sure. He doesn't know the extent of his abilities. No. He just knows there's children downstairs. He knows this guy's a murderer, and he's got to take care of it.
Like, it's also so much more self-defense. Like,
oh yeah,
I would argue that guy is putting up a pretty good fight.
But check this out. Just check this out. Just for the fun of this conversation, when David Dunn gets out of that pool, he could take those kids and leave.
Yeah.
And call the police. And instead, he goes upstairs and he kills him.
Yes, this is very true.
And I think it's the right thing in the script and in the context of the real story. I just think that's an interesting dichotomy, and I think that how deeply you ground a story in reality alters those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, dude, like, the man was angry. Mm-hmm. I would be angry.
Exactly.
If I had that, I would absolutely go back up there.
Right, I'm gonna go get that son of a bitch.
Yeah, how dare you?
And he probably was looking for more survivors, right? Like, that was probably a factor.
Yeah.
But, he also decided, when he saw the woman there, he also decided to get him.
Yeah.
And, what I think is a really great... You don't see grounded sequences of violence like that in many movies. It's so simple. He grabs the guy, and he's got a big, strong dude slamming him into the wall and elbowing him in the ribs.
I thought, can I just really
please?
Quick, I was just no, this is just a little tidbit thing. I was like, I wonder, did they get it all in one take, or did they have to put the drywall back up? That was just me from a director standpoint. I was like, how many times did they have to break the drywall? Was that easy, or did they get it all in one go, or how choreographed was this? This is just me thinking of.
I'm betting they rehearsed it real well.
I am too.
That's my bet.
I am too.
Yeah.
I'm also betting that was not Bruce Willis on top of the man.
No. No. The guy did.
Oh yeah, dude.
No. Oh yeah. I mean, probably wasn't laying those in too hard, but still, the way he was flying around.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted your thought. I don't know if you still have it or not.
If movies always make action sequences very larger than life, and that's okay for the sake of the movie. But I just think it's real neat when occasionally a movie instead tries to be more realistic, and that looked more like real life than you typically see in any kind of fight sequence.
Well, I think that is more or less what fights, real fights tend to be, because real fights are not what you see in movies.
They ain't pretty.
They 9 times out of 10 they go to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's head gets bashed.
Yeah.
It's we don't get into street fights, boys and girls, because guess what? Pavement hits a whole hell of a lot harder than a fist.
Hell yeah.
Your brain gets dislodged from your skull, and guess what? That's it. You're done. Also, teeth, very expensive. Just let's leave them in your head, yeah?
Yeah.
But yeah, real fights are just so fucking messy and not fun to watch a lot of the time. That being said, I've seen as far as blockbuster movies go, one fight that I always love to go back to for its realism and its just grittiness is the opening of Casino Royale in the bathroom.
Yeah.
That feels like a fucking real fight between two professionals.
Trained fighters, guys who know how to fight. Mm-hmm.
But still real as fuck, because there's no super duper flashy anything to it. It's guys that know how to kill but are still barely holding on to the whole thing. And that's very much what the fight. I love that, just above shot in the bedroom, and just a smaller guy holding on to a bigger guy, just holding on for dear life, just trying to choke him out. But then when he gets into
that sense of tension too, oh man, if this big guy dislodges me, I'm in trouble. Because I mean, I don't know. Maybe not everyone can relate to that. I really can. If this big dude gets me underneath him, I am in a world of hurt here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, anytime you, like, a lot of the guys, the first guy I ever got into a sparring match with had probably 50 to 60 pounds on me.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrifying.
Yep.
It's terrifying.
Yep.
So, yeah, like, this idea that, like, but it's also like, he chokes him out, you see the guy go limp,
Mm-hmm.
and then he snaps his neck.
Yep.
So you know it was a conscious decision to, like, fucking take this motherfucker out of the world.
That's right. Take him off the board.
And I'm like, in that case, yeah, dude, yeah, because justice system might have gotten that man off for X, Y, and Z.
That's
you know?
right. That's right. It might have gone wrong. He might have hurt somebody in prison. He might have gotten out of prison someday and gotten back to his. He just nope. Sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, I do love a morally gray superhero. I feel like we've talked about this. This is a slight deviation, but it's in the same context of like, I know Superman's supposed to be all goody two-shoes, but like, I've never seen him on the same playing field as Batman. Batman chooses not to kill because his parents were killed, and that is something that he doesn't ever want to put out into the world. Superman's a fucking god,
Right.
So like,
there's a moral difference,
and
there
like,
for sure.
I never, like, one of the things that everyone bitched about in Man of Steel was him, like, why wouldn't he kill Zod? Zod's a threat to humanity, which he has sworn to protect.
Right.
So yes, he would absolutely kill him.
Logically, within the context of that story, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think the argument is when you're writing a Superman story, that's not
Why
how
would you
Superman,
put him in that position?
That's not how Superman handles his problems.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely understand your point. I remember, I mean, that's definitely the way I saw it on opening night.
Yeah,
So,
I like, yeah, why, this is what he would do.
I like it, like, as a scholar of Batman and Superman, though, what something I love is that, because it's true that the godhood of Superman makes everything different, but I think the ultimate reason they both don't kill people is because they value human life, and I like that. I think it makes those characters as paragons in those stories that are not incredibly realistic really good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, again, like, this is the difference again, that like, when I'm talking about Batman, yes, is dealing with human life.
Yep.
Superman, being the godlike being that he is, usually, with the exception of Lex Luthor, his villains are
Right. They're not
to be on the
people.
same playing field are not human. So
Right.
he's
they're much
the question
scarier
of
things.
yeah, he should absolutely not, like, as a moral character, not kill humans.
Right. Should be walking around just
But,
snapping
like-
people like being Homelander and just
But yeah, like killing bad guys
Right.
on Superman's level, like, they gotta be alien of some sort. Yeah, fuck them. I don't like Superman. Go to town, man. That's why God put you on Earth.
Exactly. Like, Brainiac doesn't count. I can kill this.
Fuck Brainiac, man. Moving along, we are gonna head on over to the rewatch. Here at the rewatch, we just discussed a number of things, including the film's rewatchability factor and ways to get people to watch the film to begin with. So one of our favorite questions to pose here at the rewatch is, if you had to pick a scene from the film, just a single scene to get someone hooked to watch the rest of the film, what is the scene that you would choose? So, Kalen, hit me.
This is tough. The first thing that came to my mind is actually the post-train wreck scene in the hospital.
That is my scene.
Damn it.
That's my scene.
Damn it. Okay.
But if that's your scene too, that's okay. Because if full transparency, it was between that and the weightlifting scene. But I thought if you start that scene from when he wakes up to when the doctor says, like, how are you alive, basically,
Yes.
like, that's the hook, that's the movie right there. Like, that's how you get somebody in. So if that's your scene,
That is my scene.
yeah, that's, as far as I was concerned, that is the scene. So, yeah.
Because that gives it to you. That gives you like, why should I watch this? Here you go.
Yeah. It fucking wrapped in a beautiful bow. Like I said, the weightlifting scene was my original one because that's the one I've always gone back to as like, this is a great,
it's just a great scene. It makes you smile.
And there is, you know, intrigue to it, but like if I was to sell a person on this movie, that's the scene I would go to. In the same vein, what is your favorite scene of the movie? I feel like I know what it is, but you know.
Well, that's a little bit tough. So there's sort of that peak of the movie. Okay, my favorite scene is the ending.
Yes.
That's my favorite scene.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to the question, and I kind of already went into exactly why.
Yes, you did.
But there's also this moment in the movie where he goes and he finds his old car that he got in the car accident with Audrey in, and then he remembers. And the moment in the movie that we realize that he is the superhero he's being told he is it cuts back to the car accident, and you see him on the pavement, and he's supposed to have been permanently injured in this car accident, for the record, right? He couldn't play football again. What kind of injury leads you to never playing football again ever?
Yeah.
I mean, that's permanent injury, right? He stands up, he runs over to the car, he rips the door off of the car and pulls Audrey out of the car. And in that moment, with the theme of the movie blaring, and it's weird, in that moment, it suddenly sounds like a superhero theme. You go, wait a minute, this has sounded like a superhero theme the whole movie. He pulls her out of the car, and then after that, we cut to the scene where he calls Elijah. And he says, Elijah, I was not injured in that accident. I've never been sick. What do I do? Yeah. And as he's walking to the train station, Elijah says, go where people are, but be careful. This part won't be like a comic book. Yeah. I really love that sequence of events that leads up to, obviously, the climax of the movie. But that part always gets me feeling a certain way, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I'm fucking agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I just meant like I both of those are
the way. I mean that is where the movie really, you know, everything that we've been
building towards comes to a head in those moments. Yeah,
exactly. I think, you know, like I said, weightlifting scene is just always the father-son dynamic of that whole scene. I just love it. It's so genuine. And when I was younger, I just liked the scene because seeing it as a young man, it gave me something to aspire to.
Sure.
You know? Yeah. To want to be that strong, to push yourself. And now I see it, you know, when Joseph kind of huddles back in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, it's me and Killian when I tell Killian not to get too close when I'm doing the jump rope in the garage. Yeah. You know, so that scene is just as good for me now as it was back in the day, but for different reasons. And the scene that like really hit me this time was the scene at the breakfast table where you just see the newspaper slide in.
Newspaper,
I mean, dude, I got choked up. I just got choked up because this is a little boy who's just like so believes in his daddy, and you know, something that like none of us will ever be as fathers. Will never be like a legit superhero.
Unfortunately, we will not. Yeah.
But with any luck, if we've done our job well, then our kids will see us as superheroes. I know you saw your dad that way, so you know that scene you know hit pretty hard. And obviously both the scenes that you said, the scene of him going to the train station and the ending, those are like the scenes,
right?
So this movie is one big lead up to a fantastic payoff that is the last 2 minutes of the film, like in ways that most movies just are not.
Nope.
So, yeah, I totally agree. And if you were gonna rate this movie's rewatch value out of 10,
I would say, I guess my answer would be 9 out of 10, because if we're talking strictly rewatch value, I think a 10 out of 10 movie has to be a movie that you can watch multiple times a year.
yeah, I get that.
And I think that Unbreakable is like a once every couple of years movie.
I am the same way.
But it is a once every couple of years. Like I stay on it. Like every couple of years, I gotta watch Unbreakable again. And I think I probably will be watching Unbreakable again every couple of years for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think it has almost infinite rewatchability. But it's not something where I can literally watch it the week after I just watched it.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that, like, I think you can, but because the movie is that good, it's that well written, and it's that engaging, it really is. But for me, part of this movie is that thing of, like, where I forget little details about it, and when I go back,
you want to unravel it again, but you want to let some of it fade away. That's true. That's
exactly.
true.
And that, like I said, like that whole opening scene, like forgetting about him playing football and stuff like that, and having those revelations, and seeing it, because if I let it go another couple of years and watch it, and then another couple of years, in about, I would wager like another 7 years, I'll be, David Dunn's age, and that would be like, what, another 3 years for you or something like that? So, like, that'll be, it's just fun to see this movie at different stages in your life because it hits differently,
Yeah.
I agree. I'm at like an 8 out of 10. Again, it is such a fantastically engaging film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, didn't look at my phone. That's always like a pretty amazing thing if, like, I can just sit and watch a movie, particularly a movie that I've seen before, just sit and be dialed in with it, so yeah, that'd be a 8.5 out of 10 for the rewatch value on the Johnny Horror Podcast. And so without any further ado, we are going to jump on over to the Johnny Horror Score. So here at the Johnny Horror Score, we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy of the film and give our final thoughts and rankings. So let me hop on over here back to the old Wikipedia. Oh dear. Okay, so here you go. Box office. Unbreakable was released in the United States on November 21st, 2000, and 2,708 films, and grossed $30.3 million in its opening weekend, finishing second at the box office behind. Can you guess what it is?
2000?
2000, around Christmas time.
No.
Jim Carrey.
Was it The Grinch?
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
But, like, you get it, right?
I know how the box office works.
Yeah.
It's a more quadrant movie versus M. Night Shyamalan thriller.
I do love that movie. The film ended up earning $95 million domestically and $153.1 million internationally, for a total of $248.1 million against a $75 million budget.
Probably not as profitable as they were hoping for.
No, probably not. They probably should have marketed it a little bit better, you fucks.
Yeah.
Critical response. Unbreakable received generally positive reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval of 70%,
based on 175 reviews with the average rating of 6.3 out of 10.
Jesus Christ.
The website's critical response consensus states, with a weaker ending, Unbreakable is not as good as The Sixth Sense. However, it is a quietly suspenseful film that intrigues and engages, taking the audience through unpredictable twists and turns along the way. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 62 out of 100 based on 31 critics, generally indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled the CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of a C on an A+ to F scale.
And if you know how CinemaScore works, that's really bad.
Yes, that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But as I said before, this is a thinking man superhero movie.
100%.
Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Oh, that Roger Ebert.
Yeah.
The
one Roger Ebert.
One and only, gave Unbreakable 3 out of 4 stars and had largely enjoyed the film, but was disappointed with the ending.
That's so disappointing.
Ebert believed that Willis' subtle acting was positively different from the actor's usual work as brainless action movies. I assume he's referring to the Die Hard franchise, which, Ebert, come on, baby. What are we talking about here? Richard Corliss of Time opinioned that Unbreakable continued Shyamalan's previous approach of balancing sophistication and horror in all of his movies. All 2 of them, baby.
That's right.
Desson Thompson of the Washington Post wrote that just as he did in The Sixth Sense, writer-director M. Night Shyamalan leads you into a fascinating labyrinth, an alternative universe that lurks right under our noses. In this case, it's a mythological world, and in these modern times, the secret design to that labyrinth, the key to the path, is contained in comic books. Kenneth Turan, writing for the Los Angeles Times, gave a negative review, arguing that Unbreakable had, get this, no originality. Whether it means to or not, the shadow of The Sixth Sense hangs over Unbreakable. If The Sixth Sense hadn't been as big of a success as it was, the story might have been assigned to oblivion or at least to rewrite. Todd McCarthy of Variety mostly criticized Shyamalan's writing and the performances given by the actors. Wow. He did praise...
Talk about being bad at your job.
I know, right?
So I don't want to be too bitter, but get real.
He did praise the editing and James Newton Howard's music composition, which we didn't talk about.
I did a little tiny bit.
Yeah,
but
I dropped that.
Great.
It's a great score. I will save my complete thoughts because for as good as the score is in this movie, there is a use of it in the sequels that might be some of the best needle drop in the history of film. But
I agree, but we'll talk about that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. In 2002, Audrey Colombe, we'll say Colombe, described the movie's plot as an example of what Toni Morrison calls a dehistorizing allegory, with the Elijah Price character as yet another example of white Hollywood's magical African American male character.
Okay, so
helping the white hero do the right thing, though Elijah is described as a rare exception to the rule that the character is never bad.
Okay, the expression is, and this isn't me using a bad word here, this is the expression used in literary critique. It's the magical Negro. And they use that word specifically because the concept is that it's insulting to the character that they are using what makes them special to help a white person. Stephen King is very guilty of writing these sort of magical characters who are black people but all they do is help some random special white person just because, rather than having their own agenda
The Shining.
or helping themselves. Right, a perfect example.
Yeah.
And it's a fair criticism. Like, that is a fair trope to point out. Elijah Price does not fit the bill.
No.
And you weren't watching the movie.
Yeah.
And there's a movie out right now called The American Society of Magical Negroes. That's the name of the movie. And the joke of the movie, the fun of the movie is they have actual magical powers, and they instead of using them to make the world better, they use them to make white people comfortable so that they're safe. Right? And I know, it's a brilliant concept. It really is. And I look forward to watching the movie. But Elijah Price is literally
murdering people.
and he's also literally the crux of the movies. It turns out he was serving his own ends the entire time.
Yeah.
The point of that trope and that critique is that said black person is not looking out for themselves. They're looking out for some white person. That's not what's happening in this movie. Elijah Price is out for himself the whole time.
He says it at the very end. He's like, now I know what my place is.
They spell it out for you. So, I'm sorry, whoever wrote that needs to, I don't know, learn to read or something. That's really frustrating.
Shyamalan admitted that he was disappointed by the reaction Unbreakable received from the public and critics. Shyamalan also disliked Touchstone's marketing campaign. He wanted to promote Unbreakable as a comic book movie, but Touchstone insisted as portraying it as a psychological thriller similar to The Sixth Sense. Okay, here we go. Later reviews.
Woo.
Here we go. In 2009, a low-key indie filmmaker of really no notes, goes by the name of Tarantino, praised Unbreakable and included it on his list of top 20 films released since 1992, the year he became a director. Tarantino praised the film as a brilliant retelling of the Superman mythology and said it contains what he considers to be Bruce Willis's best performance. He also criticized the way the film was marketed upon release, stating that he felt it would have been far more effective if the film's advertising simply posed the question, what if Superman was here on Earth and didn't know he was Superman? Boom.
Oh, boom.
In 2011, Time ranked the film at number 4 in its list of top 10 superhero movies of all time. Fuck you, Audrey Colombe! Describing it as one of the best superhero origin stories and as a relatively quiet, subtle, and realistic look at the pressures that come with being a superhero. In 2018, The Hollywood Reporter called it a deconstruction of the American superhero villain complex that is more prescient than ever.
There we go.
We got back to it.
That's better.
Yes. Let's see. Films that we've covered on this podcast that were not appreciated in their time. The big one, The Thing. When it came out, it was panned upon release.
Yep.
Straight up ruined John Carpenter's career.
I know.
Like, that man could have been on a completely different
It's a tragedy.
path.
It's a tragedy. Like, he made one of the great movies ever, and then, like, he had his career destroyed for it. It's crazy.
He is solely responsible for 2 of probably, like, out of the top 10 greatest horror movies of all time.
100%. I would say almost inarguably.
Yeah, and I mean, like, my argument is that, like, for, like, this is heresy in some regards, but, like, I think The Thing is the better horror movie. Like, you could make the argument that Halloween is the better movie.
Right.
Like, especially for what it did for the
Yeah.
genre, but The Thing is the shit.
Yep.
Also, Alien, believe it or not, was not immediately well received. It took a beat, much quicker beat.
Mm.
But upon its initial release, like the first 6 to 12 months, I don't think it was super duper positively received. Halloween 3, just and in a sense, rightfully so, but has also come around as being a lot of particularly genre fans, one of their favorites in the franchise. So this definitely follows suit. As far as I'm concerned, anybody who knows anything about comic books and comic book movies knows this to be up there.
Yep.
If, and I apologize because I'm just throwing this to you on the fly, out of your top 10 comic book movies, where does this one rank?
Ranking comic book movies is very difficult
hard.
because a lot of time's gone by and we've gotten a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they cover really different ground.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say The Dark Knight's more in line with The Godfather and Heat than it is with, fucking Superman.
Right. And on that note, the Batman is more in line with Chinatown and Clute than it is with Superman.
Yeah.
And Logan is more in line with Tombstone
and Unforgiven.
Yeah. And Shane than it is Superman, right?
Yeah.
So we've reached a point where superhero movies can be a lot of things.
Which this is also.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are movies like the original Avengers that I think is the perfect action adventure big superhero team up, beam in the sky, CGI. I think it's the perfect version of that movie, right?
Yes.
And that's a lot different than the Batman and Logan and Unbreakable, and The Dark Knight. And then you have The Incredibles or something like that, which goes a completely different direction, right? So that makes it complicated, and sometimes I will rank them from more serious things. How do you rank the Joker? You know what I mean? That's more like a Scorsese movie than it has anything to do with beams in the sky, right?
Yeah.
So, all of that said, I think Unbreakable is probably the best superhero movie ever made.
Damn!
I just, and look, there's a lot of, Richard Donner's Superman is so great, and The Dark Knight is so great, and the Batman is so great, and Logan is so great, and I mentioned Incredibles. I think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and I think the first Into the Spider-Verse and the original Avengers. I think these are all there's so many, and I love this shit. You know that. Yeah. There's so many you could pick.
Yeah.
But in terms of if you're just asking me best movie, best writing, best directing, best performances, best storytelling, best film, period, I think it's Unbreakable.
That is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's where I got it.
Well, I guess I don't have to ask what your rating out of 10 would be.
I think you know.
I'm at a 9 out of 10. So I guess that would put us at 9.5. Yeah, guys, we how long we had to have spent an hour in the good stuff just just talking about, and granted we left out I would say we left out a third of the movie we didn't actually cover, but this is an incredible movie, guys. If you've made it this far in the podcast and you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing?
Yeah, seriously. Go watch this movie.
Please. More importantly, if you're listening to this, you've seen the movie, show other people this movie.
Yeah.
That is what you should do. This is I remember it was just one of those things where I told Celeste, I was this is a movie I want to show you. I don't know if you'll like it, but I still want you to see it. And I do think she did, because Celeste has pretty solid taste in movies.
Yep.
Pretty spectacular taste, actually. But like sometimes just you don't even need to tell them. Just say, hey, we're gonna watch this movie, or
I want to watch this movie with you. Like, will you watch this with me?
Yeah, or just tell them, hey, go watch this movie. And this applies to any movie that you think is like socially significant or that is important to you. Like if you want to share something with somebody, like, dude, it's such an amazing experience to sit down and watch a movie with somebody, or have someone that like you work with and you tell them, hey, I think you should watch this movie or this show, and they come back the next day and they're like, hey, I watched this and you were absolutely right, dude. This hit X, Y, and Z. I got a good buddy of mine at work. His name's Andrew, and anytime I'm like, dude, you gotta watch this. Like I told him about this show on Amazon Prime, Reacher. A dumb fun show that I was like, dude, I'm having so much fun watching the show, you should watch the show. He came back like the day after, and it's like, dude, I watched like 4 episodes already and the show's fucking great.
Yeah.
So like that's just like my little, pledge to, keep the dream of cinema alive, because every now and then you get a gem of a movie that just like kind of falls through the cracks.
Yep.
Like Unbreakable.
Yep. Unbreakable almost really did fall through the cracks. Like I think Tarantino bringing it up led to a little bit of a groundswell, and then I think there being more movies in the series led to some resurgence. But I mean, this was a movie that I remember like in the aughts. This being full disclosure, this is like my favorite movie. This is like my favorite film. I remember it being like my favorite movie, and like no one had really seen it. And most people who hadn't really given it a shot, hadn't really paid attention. Like, oh yeah, he's kind of a superhero, but his kryptonite's water. That's kind of lame. And it's like, did you pay attention to the movie?
Yeah, well,
that's another thing. It's like if you don't give a movie the respect that it deserves, you may not get out of it what it's worth.
It's interesting. I was talking to a gal at my work. Like I said, posed a question to her, just trying to get to know her better. I was like, what's your favorite movie? Mm-hmm. And I don't think she gave me a direct answer. And then she was like, what's your favorite movie? I was like, oh, it's Jaws. And she's like, oh, Jaws, that's kind of cheesy, isn't it? And my immediate thought was like, I was like,
punched her in the face.
Yeah. Definitely thought about it. And like I've had people give me that response before, but it's always because they think they know what the shark looks like, and the shark is cheesy and stuff like that. Sure. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't think it's cheesy. She's like, yeah, but I was like, have you seen it? And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, what do you think's cheesy about it? And she's like, well, that music. And I really had to like pause. Like I like almost like had my buddy Andrew that I was working with like hold me back, because I was just like, I need to like.
I'm just imagining you just like slow motion, like you jump up in the air and you do like a wild spinning back kick, and you just knock her head off. Oh, it lands in somebody's soup.
I had to pull up a picture. I found the most recent like selfie I posted on Instagram that had this like background, but it's all like fuzzy and you can only see like the poster. The rest of it's just me trying to be sexy, and I was like trying to like you can't see the whole thing. I'm trying to like zoom in on the background. Like don't pay no attention to that man in the foreground.
Pay no attention to the nude man.
But and then it hit me that. And then I was talking to Andrew about it. I was like, the music has become so synonymous in pop culture that
it's so parodied and
gone beyond fear, and it's become silly.
Mm-hmm.
because it's been everywhere. Like, and kids do it in the swimming pool. Like, I mean, like you did in the swimming pool, I did in the swimming pool. Even before I saw Jaws, I knew what Jaws was.
Yeah.
But that is like the telltale sign of something that is socially significant.
Right.
100%. But in that context of that situation, it was exactly what you were getting at. That someone who just brushed off the film has no idea.
Right.
Like, had I sat her down in a dark room and just played the movie, and she saw the opening scene of that girl getting eaten, that puts your fucking heart in your throat every single time.
Sure does. Oh.
So, yeah, when people don't give a movie it's you know, it's due. And I mean, I fucking hate the water argument. I hate the water argument for Signs more than anything. And we've talked about this, and I will continue to talk about this. People are like, what? Why would they come to a planet like made of water? I'm like, well, maybe they don't know what the fuck water is!
Shut the fuck up. That's why? Like, have you ever... Oh my god, dude. That's... the idiocy there is high level. Have you ever tried writing a movie? It's a point of pain for me right now, is that people don't respect film as much as they used to.
Yeah.
People don't care as much as they used to.
It's also like, think about the amount of content that's shoved down people's throats every single day. Like, every single day there's a new Netflix show, a new Netflix movie, there's a new this, that, or the other, you know, new streaming thing, da-da-da-da-da. So, like, I mean, and that, you know, it's kind of like what happened, like, on a grander scale, it's what happened with Star Wars. Like when we got Star Wars movies, it used to be a big fucking deal. Now we get Star Wars every other month, and it's like, why do I care?
And and some of it's not.
Most of it's not very
what
good.
It used to be. Yeah. That's I was trying to put it nicely, but yeah. I remember when Killers of the Flower Moon was coming out, Martin Scorsese was like, "Hey, go see my movie. Go see it in a movie theater. Put your fucking phone away and watch the movie." He's like, "It's 3.5 hours, and there's no action sequences. Just sit down and watch the movie.
Yeah.
Give that respect to cinema." And I don't love all of Martin Scorsese's old man takes. I think sometimes he sounds like an old man yelling at a cloud.
Yeah.
But I agreed with him on that.
Yeah.
I think it is sad that we live in a generation where the idea of just putting down your damn phone and watching a long movie is too much to ask from people. Yeah. I don't like that. I don't agree with that. Like, like Logan Paul bragged about walking out of Oppenheimer because it's just people talking. And I'm like, what the fuck did you think a movie about J. Robert Oppenheimer was going to be? Like, did you think he was going to do kung fu scenes? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what did you expect from this film? You know.
I mean, I had a similar thing where, like, we went and saw it on opening night, me and my sister, and there was, like, so many bros that were there. It seemed like just so many bros. We sat next to them, and everyone was just, like, cheering, like they were getting ready to go watch a Batman movie.
Yeah.
And then, like, when we walked out, those same guys were all hyped. Like, oh, man, dude, I fell asleep, like, an hour in or something like that. I'm like, what did you think you were going to go see?
Yeah.
This is a historical drama about one of the most significant events in the history of man.
Yeah.
Like, this is not like this is not your daddy's Christopher Nolan film, you know?
No, that's a weird expression. A weird and apt expression.
But yeah, I mean, I am, you know, of the same mind. I will say that I did watch Killers of the Flower Moon, but I did pay for it on Apple and watched it at home because I enjoy my frequent bathroom breaks.
And that's fair. That's fair. That's a fair reason. I mean, I get that.
But
it wasn't because you weren't willing to give a movie 210 minutes of your time.
Though. No, by no means. We've talked about this before. That there are movies that I am absolutely like, yeah, we gotta go see that in the cinema. That is a cinema experience. Dune 2.
Sure
A
was.
cinema fucking experience.
Yep.
That the best. I heard a lot of people say it was like The Dark Knight or Empire. For me, it was much more Return, or excuse me, The Two Towers. That's what like that felt like to me. Two Towers also like very maybe like a similar story because I like watched Fellowship of the Ring for the first time like at home like a couple of weeks before.
Got it.
Two Towers came out, and Dune I watched the first part a couple of days at home before the second part came out. So, but yeah, and then there are other movies that I'm like, I have a kid, you know, I have life, you know, and we gotta pick and choose our battles. But
changes the equation a little bit.
All that said, guys, you can watch Unbreakable on HBO Max
It's
right
on
now.
Max. And if you can't get Max for some reason, it's worth renting. It's worth buying.
Yeah, what is you probably rent it on Amazon for $2.99.
Yeah, it's worth it. Put your phone down.
Yeah,
and watch the movie, and you will be glad you did.
And if you were gonna watch this movie and double feature it with something at the Johnny Horror Drive-In, don't worry, pal. I'm gonna be shooting from the hip too because I didn't think anything.
It's a tough one. So this movie is unlike any other. This movie is there's not a lot of comps to this movie, but I'm going to go with something that involves unraveling a mystery and a man who feels stuck in his life, a family man who feels stuck in his life, unraveling a great mystery. Very different movie, but I think it pairs well. 1977. Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That is
I think that's the pairing for this, especially because Shyamalan is such a Spielbergian... He's a post-Spielberg kind of kid, you know?
Yeah.
I think that one of the movies that he probably grew up watching that turned him into the guy that made Unbreakable is probably Close Encounters. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a slightly more aggressive take.
There we go.
Old Boy.
Oh, wow. Jesus. Okay.
Because I think it does have the same thing of like a man who has no idea what the fuck's going on and does some legit superhero business with a fucking butt fuck of an ending.
Oh, man. Hey, I'm not going to spoil Old Boy. If you haven't seen that, go watch that too.
Jesus.
The real movie, not the American remake.
Yes.
The actual Old Boy.
Yes. Watch the Korean version.
Yeah, watch the Korean film.
They do shit differently, man.
Movie goes places. Hey, hats off to Korean cinema. They make some real cool films out there.
Yes, they do.
Wow.
Well, that'll about do it for this episode of the Johnny Horror Podcast. Kalen, thanks, man. This has been a long time coming. This is a fun episode.
You really got me with Old Boy there, bro. I'm like, whoa. It's like I've been accosted. Like, oh, Old Boy.
It's just, like, if you've seen that movie, like, even bringing it up, you're like...
Yeah.
I gotta take a beat. Somebody, like, one of the kids at work, like, who's all into cinema, like hardcore, like, you know, cinephile, like, you know, and he came up to me at work a couple of weeks back and was like, I watched Old Boy, and I was like, go take a shower.
Yep. You're like, oh, let me pour you a drink.
Get the fuck away from me right now. I don't need this energy. I gotta be nice to fucking soccer moms
right deal with people right now. You're gonna be talking about Old Boy.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. This is a good time. I think this is the easy one. I think this is really the easy one. Because it's just all one way thinking. The further on we go down Eastrail, the more complicated these conversations are going to get.
Indeed.
But we look forward to having those conversations, and hopefully you guys look forward to listening to them. I am one of your hosts, Johnny Horror, and with me, my co-host, Kalen Behrman. We are the Johnny Horror Podcast, and we will see you motherfuckers on the flip side.
Peace.
Adios, muchachos!